Good evening. The account you are about to hear is not real. It is a work of fiction, and yet it may feel all too possible. There are no meteors falling on your neighborhood tonight, no cosmic harbingers streaking across your sky. The voices you will hear are not those of living souls. They were created entirely through artificial intelligence. Any resemblance to persons living or dead is purely coincidental. Listen closely now and cast your gaze upward to the stars. For tonight, we explore what happens when humanity discovers that the universe itself has other plans. Enjoy the show.
Good evening, I'm Oscar Stamper with Channel 7 News. Tonight we begin with reports of unusual space debris causing property damage across several metropolitan areas over the past 2 days. What authorities are calling routine cosmic debris has resulted in damaged rooftops, shattered windows, and at least 3 small fires in residential neighborhoods. The National Weather Service confirms these are not meteorological events, and preliminary investigations suggest the objects are fragments of space rock entering our atmosphere. We now go live to Grace Frost, who is at the Millfield subdivision where the largest impact occurred earlier today.
Thanks, Oscar. I'm standing here in what used to be the backyard of the Henderson family home, where a chunk of space debris, roughly the size of a basketball, punched a crater 3 feet deep into their lawn. You can see behind me the scattered fragments of what appears to be metallic rock, still warm to the touch hours after impact. Homeowner Janet Henderson tells me she was doing dishes when she heard what sounded like a freight train followed by an explosion that rattled every window in her house. Fire department officials say they've responded to 7 similar incidents just in this county alone since yesterday morning. What's particularly unusual, according to the fire chief, is the clustering pattern of these impacts, all occurring within a roughly 15-mile radius. Residents I've spoken with describe the same sequence: a brilliant flash of light, then a thunderous boom, followed by the acrid smell of burning metal. Back to you, Oscar.
Thanks, Grace. Authorities stress there is no immediate danger to the public, though they are advising residents to avoid handling any debris they might find on their property. The Federal Aviation Administration has issued a notice to pilots about possible continued space debris activity, but emphasizes this appears to be a temporary phenomenon. Local emergency management officials are working with federal agencies to catalog the impact sites and analyze the composition of these mysterious fragments. We now go live to Jenny Biederman, an astrophysicist and expert in the field of planetary defense and near-Earth objects, who joins us to help explain what this meteor event could mean for our planet.
Thank you, Oscar. What we're seeing is really quite normal from an astronomical perspective, though I understand it can seem alarming to folks on the ground. Every day, Earth's atmosphere is bombarded by tons of cosmic material, most of which burns up harmlessly as shooting stars. Occasionally, larger fragments survive atmospheric entry and reach the surface as meteorites. While the clustering pattern is somewhat unusual, it's not unprecedented and likely represents debris from a single source that fragmented in space before entering our atmosphere. Our preliminary analysis suggests these fragments are consistent with ordinary chondrite meteorites, which are among the most common types found on Earth. We're continuing to monitor the situation, but based on current data, we expect this activity to diminish naturally over the next few days as the debris field disperses. There's really nothing for the public to be concerned about at this time.
Thank you for that reassurance. We'll continue following this story as it develops. In other news tonight, City Council meets tomorrow to discuss the proposed downtown development project that has divided residents for months. We'll be right back after this short break with your complete weather forecast and sports updates. This is Channel 7 News. I'm Oscar Stamper. Good evening, I'm Oscar Stamper. We begin tonight with breaking news from the astronomical community. Scientists at the Deep Space Observatory have announced the discovery of a previously unknown asteroid, designated Object 2024 Alpha, which was detected using advanced tracking systems just 48 hours ago. The asteroid, estimated to be roughly 10 miles in diameter, was apparently hidden behind solar glare until recent orbital positioning allowed for direct observation. Initial calculations suggest the object will pass within the Moon's orbital distance of Earth, making it what astronomers call a close approach, but still well within safe parameters. Observatory officials stress that while this represents a significant astronomical event, the asteroid poses no immediate danger to our planet. We now go live to Grace Frost, who is at the Mount Wilson Observatory, where scientists are continuing to monitor this newly discovered space object.
Thanks, Oscar. I'm here at Mount Wilson, where astronomers have been working around the clock since the discovery of Object 2024 Alpha. Behind me, you can see the massive telescope dome that first captured images of this asteroid. And I can tell you the atmosphere here is one of controlled excitement rather than alarm. Dr. Sarah Miller, the lead astronomer who made the initial discovery, tells me that finding an asteroid of this size so close to Earth is extraordinarily rare, describing it as the astronomical equivalent of winning the lottery. The scientists I've spoken with emphasize that while the asteroid will make a historically close pass by Earth, their preliminary trajectory calculations show it will miss our planet by approximately 60,000 miles. To put that in perspective, that's about a quarter of the distance to the moon, which in cosmic terms is considered a very safe margin. The team here is calling this a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for scientific observation, with plans already underway to study the asteroid's composition and structure as it approaches. Back to you, Oscar.
Thanks, Grace. Federal agencies, including NASA and the Department of Defense, have been briefed on the discovery, though officials continue to emphasize that current projections show no collision risk. The asteroid is expected to reach its closest approach to Earth in approximately 3 weeks, at which point it should be visible to amateur astronomers with basic telescopes. Emergency management officials say they are monitoring the situation as a precautionary measure, but stress that no special preparations are necessary at this time. We now go to our expert to help us understand what this discovery means for the average citizen. We are now joined by astronomer Neil Grissom for more insight on the asteroid.
Oscar, I want to reassure your viewers that this is actually a fascinating scientific opportunity rather than a cause for concern. Asteroids pass by Earth regularly, though most are much smaller and farther away than Object 2024 Alpha. What makes this discovery special is both the size of the object and the relatively close distance of its approach, which will allow us unprecedented opportunities for detailed study. Our current trajectory models, which have been verified by multiple independent institutions, show the asteroid following a predictable elliptical path that will carry it safely past Earth. Think of it like a train on tracks, Oscar. We can calculate exactly where those tracks lead, and in this case, they lead to a safe passage that poses no threat to our planet. The orbital mechanics are actually quite straightforward once you account for gravitational influences and the asteroid's current velocity. This is the kind of event that reminds us how dynamic and fascinating our solar system really is, and I encourage people to view this as an exciting chance to witness a rare cosmic visitor rather than something to worry about.
Dr. Grissom, thank you for that perspective. We'll continue to follow this developing story as more information becomes available from the scientific community. Officials remind the public that there are currently no recommended precautions or preparations related to this asteroid discovery. In related news, cleanup continues from the recent meteorite impacts that damaged property across several neighborhoods, though authorities now believe those events may be completely unrelated to the newly discovered asteroid. Coming up after the break, we'll have your complete weather forecast and an update on the downtown development controversy. Stay with Channel 7 News.
All right, we're live on the Max Campbell podcast. So there's some crazy stuff happening in the sky right now, and I wanted to get someone on here who actually knows what they're talking about. I've got Dr. Ilse Lund here. She's an astrophysicist, and dude, the stuff that's been falling from the sky lately, it's wild. Like chunks of space rocks just crashing into people's backyards. Now there's this massive asteroid coming our way. They're calling it Object 2024 Alpha or something like that. 10 miles wide. That's the size of a small city flying through space. Dr. Lund, what is going on up there?
Well, Max, I appreciate the directness. What we're seeing is actually something that happens constantly. Our planet is essentially moving through a cosmic shooting gallery. Every day, about 100 tons of space debris hits our atmosphere. Most of it burns up and creates those shooting stars you see at night. But some chunks do make it to the ground. The recent clustering we've been seeing is unusual, I'll give you that. But it's not unprecedented. These fragments likely came from the same parent body that broke apart at some point, maybe from a collision or just thermal stress from getting too close to the sun. It's like when you break a cookie. All the crumbs fall in roughly the same area.
That's a good analogy. But let's look at that video of the meteorite that hit that guy's house in Michigan. Look at that. That thing just smashed through his roof like it was paper. And this is happening more frequently now, right? It's got people freaking out thinking maybe this is connected to this big-ass asteroid that's coming. Is there any chance, and I know this sounds crazy, but is there any chance something knocked these things loose on purpose? Like, could there be some kind of intelligence behind this?
I love that you're thinking outside the box, Max, but the physics tells us a much simpler story. When objects break apart in space, they follow what we call similar orbital paths. It's like if you threw a bunch of marbles from a moving car, they'd all land in roughly the same area, because they inherited the car's velocity. These space rocks are following the same principle. They're all coming from the same general direction, because they used to be part of the same object, probably broken apart thousands or maybe millions of years ago. The timing of when they hit our atmosphere is just coincidental from our perspective, but inevitable from a physics standpoint.
Okay, that makes sense. But let's talk about this big one. Object 2024 Alpha, 10 miles across. That's massive. I was reading that when the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs hit, it was only like 6 miles across. So this thing is almost double the size of the dinosaur killer. Now they're saying it's going to miss us by 60,000 miles, which sounds like a lot, but in space terms, isn't that like threading a needle? What happens if their calculations are off by just a little bit?
That's a great question, Max, and I understand why people are nervous about it. But here's the thing. Orbital mechanics is probably the most precise science we have. We've been doing this for over 300 years, since Newton first figured out how gravity works. 60,000 miles might sound close, but it's actually a quarter of the distance to the moon. In cosmic terms, that's a comfortable margin. It's like two trains passing on parallel tracks that are miles apart. Our calculations account for everything. The gravitational pull of all the planets, solar radiation pressure, even tiny effects from relativity. The math is rock solid.
But here's what trips me out. Every time someone says the math is rock solid, something unexpected happens. Like, remember when they said the Titanic was unsinkable? Or when NASA lost that Mars probe because someone mixed up metric and imperial measurements? And space is so vast and weird. There could be forces out there we don't even know about yet. What about dark matter? What about quantum effects? Could there be something we're missing?
You're absolutely right to be skeptical, Max. That's actually what makes good science. But the difference with orbital mechanics is that we've been testing these predictions for centuries, and they work. We can predict where Jupiter will be in 1,000 years, and we'll be right. Dark matter operates on much larger scales, galactic scales. For something the size of this asteroid, over the distances we're talking about, classical physics is all we need. The only way this thing could significantly change course would be if it hit another large object, and we'd see that coming with our current tracking systems. We're watching this thing like a hawk.
Have you ever seen anything like this before in your career? Because I've been talking to people and they're saying this is unprecedented. Like, never in recorded history has something this big come this close. Is that accurate?
In my 15 years studying near-Earth objects, no, I've never seen anything quite like this. Most of the asteroids we track are much smaller, maybe a few hundred feet across at most, and they usually keep their distance. This is definitely a rare event. But here's what's exciting about it. This asteroid is like a time machine. It's been floating out there unchanged since the solar system formed 4.5 billion years ago. We're going to be able to study it with telescopes and instruments that didn't exist even 10 years ago. It's going to teach us incredible things about how the solar system formed, maybe even about the origins of life.
That's cool. So instead of being terrified, we should be excited. You know what this reminds me of? It's like when you're a kid and a circus comes to town, something amazing and rare is happening and you get to witness it. But I gotta ask, if this thing did hit us, hypothetically, what would happen? Like, are we talking about extinction level event or just a really bad day?
Well, it's not going to hit us. But if it did, yeah, it would be catastrophic. It would definitely end civilization as we know it. The impact would throw so much debris into the atmosphere that it would block out the sun for months, maybe years. Global crop failure, massive climate disruption. But Max, the key point is that this scenario isn't going to happen. We know exactly where this thing is going, and it's nowhere near us. It's like asking what would happen if the moon suddenly decided to crash into Earth. It's just not in the realm of physical possibility.
All right, so the science says we're good. The math checks out. But there's something about all this that just feels significant, you know? Like the universe is trying to tell us something. Maybe it's just my monkey brain looking for patterns where there aren't any. But the timing of everything, the smaller impacts, now this big one, it feels like we're living through something important. What do you think about that? Am I just being a paranoid ape, or is there something to this feeling?
I think you're responding to something very real, Max. The fact that we're witnessing a genuinely rare cosmic event. Your instincts are right that this is significant, just not in a dangerous way. It's significant because we're getting a front row seat to see how the solar system works on the largest scales. The universe isn't trying to tell us anything malevolent. It's showing us its beauty and complexity. The same forces that created the Earth, that made life possible, are still operating out there. We're not separate from the cosmos, Max. We're part of it, and events like this remind us of our place in something much larger than ourselves.
That's beautiful, man. That's a really beautiful way to think about it. Dr. Ilsa Lund, thank you for coming on and explaining all this. You've definitely made me feel better about the whole situation. And you know what? Maybe instead of doom-scrolling Twitter about asteroids, people should go outside and look up at the night sky. There's some amazing shit happening up there, and we're lucky enough to be alive to see it. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow with more conversations about the weird and wonderful universe we live in. And remember, the universe is under no obligation to make sense to us, but sometimes, when we use science and reason, it reveals its secrets anyway.
Good evening. I'm Oscar Stamper with Channel 7 News, and we begin tonight with developing concerns about the increasing meteorite activity affecting major metropolitan areas across the region. What began as isolated incidents of space debris has escalated into a more frequent pattern, with emergency responders reporting 17 separate impact events since our last broadcast. The impacts are no longer confined to suburban neighborhoods, but have now struck downtown areas, including a significant strike that damaged the roof of City Hall and another that created a crater in the parking lot of Memorial Hospital. While authorities continue to maintain that these events pose no systematic threat, the frequency and urban nature of recent impacts has prompted emergency management officials to establish coordination protocols with federal agencies. We now go live to Grace Frost, who is at the scene of the most recent impact in the financial district.
Thanks, Oscar. I'm standing in front of the First National Bank building where emergency crews are still working to secure the area after a meteorite punched through the building's facade just 3 hours ago. You can see behind me the jagged hole in the limestone exterior, roughly 4 feet in diameter, where the fragment tore through what engineers tell me is 8 inches of reinforced stone. Bank security footage captured the moment of impact, showing a brilliant flash followed by an explosion of debris that showered the sidewalk where dozens of pedestrians had been walking just minutes earlier. Fire Captain Rodriguez tells me they've never seen meteorite impacts with this kind of penetrative force before, describing the fragments as unusually dense and traveling at what he called extreme velocities. What's particularly concerning emergency responders is the pattern of impacts, which seem to be following major population corridors rather than the random distribution you'd expect from natural space debris. I've spoken with 3 witnesses who described the same sequence, a sound like tearing metal, then a brilliant green flash followed by an impact that rattled windows for blocks around. The meteorite fragments themselves are being collected by teams in hazmat suits, though officials won't say why such precautions are necessary for ordinary space rocks. Back to you, Oscar.
Thanks, Grace. The Federal Emergency Management Agency has dispatched assessment teams to coordinate with local authorities, though officials stress this is purely precautionary and part of standard protocols for unusual natural events. The National Guard has been placed on standby to assist with debris cleanup and traffic control should the impact frequency continue to increase. Several schools in the affected areas have moved outdoor activities indoors as a safety measure, and the mayor's office is advising residents to avoid unnecessary travel during peak impact hours, which appear to occur most frequently during early evening hours. We now go live to Jenny Biderman, an astrophysicist, for analysis of these troubling developments.
Oscar, I want to emphasize that while the recent increase in meteorite activity is certainly unusual, it still falls within the range of natural phenomena we've observed during previous debris field encounters. What we're likely witnessing is our planet passing through a more dense region of the debris field associated with the newly discovered asteroid. The apparent clustering around urban areas is actually a statistical artifact, what scientists call observation bias, because populated areas have more witnesses and better reporting infrastructure than rural regions. Meteorites don't target cities. They fall randomly across the Earth's surface, but we notice and report them more often when they impact areas where people live and work. That said, the frequency of impacts does suggest we're encountering material with a higher density than our initial projections indicated. We're working closely with international space agencies to refine our models and better understand the composition and distribution of this debris field. The precautionary measures being implemented are entirely appropriate and demonstrate our commitment to public safety, but they should not be interpreted as indicators of imminent danger.
Are there any concerns that this increased activity might be related to Object 2024 Alpha, the asteroid that's scheduled to make a close approach in the coming weeks?
That's an excellent question, Oscar, and it's one that our teams are actively investigating. It's certainly possible that the meteorite activity represents advanced debris from the asteroid's gravitational influence, material that may have been loosely bound to the main body and is now being stripped away as it approaches our planet. However, I want to stress that this wouldn't change our trajectory calculations for the main asteroid itself. Large asteroids are solid bodies that don't shed significant mass during routine gravitational encounters. What we may be seeing is simply a preview of the spectacular meteor displays that will accompany the asteroid's close passage as loose debris in its vicinity burns up in our atmosphere. From a scientific standpoint, this actually provides us with valuable advanced data about the asteroid's composition and the structure of its surrounding debris field.
We'll continue monitoring this developing situation throughout the evening. Emergency management officials remind residents to report any meteorite impacts immediately and to avoid handling debris, as fragments may be hot and potentially hazardous. The mayor's office has announced that tomorrow's downtown festival will proceed as scheduled, though with additional safety protocols and expanded emergency medical coverage. Coming up after the break, we'll have an exclusive interview with a local family whose home was damaged in yesterday's meteorite strike. Stay with Channel 7 News for continuing coverage of this unprecedented natural phenomena.
I'm mad as hell about what they're hiding from you. They want you to believe these meteorite strikes are just random space debris, just cosmic coincidence. But let me tell you something, folks. I've been tracking the patterns, and this is no accident. 7 impacts in a 15-mile radius, all happening within 48 hours, and they expect us to swallow this garbage about routine cosmic debris. Wake up, people! I've got sources inside the fire department. I've got contacts in emergency management. And they're telling me things that will chill you to the bone. Military convoys have been moving through the impact zones at 3 in the morning, collecting samples, cordoning off areas, and threatening witnesses with federal prosecution if they talk to the media. They don't want you to know that these aren't meteorites at all. They're fragments of something much bigger, something that's coming our way. And the corporate machine that runs this country has known about it for months. You think it's coincidence that defense contractors' stock prices have been quietly climbing for weeks while they feed you lies through their puppet media outlets? They've got underground bunkers. They've got continuity of government protocols already in motion, and they're letting you and your families sit here like sheep waiting for slaughter while they prepare their escape plans. The system doesn't care about human life. It doesn't care about human dignity. It only cares about maintaining control and protecting the elite who think they can ride out whatever's coming in their fortified compounds while the rest of us burn. This isn't about left or right politics. This isn't about Democrat or Republican. This is about a shadow government that has declared war on truth itself, that has decided your life, your children's lives, your family's lives are expendable in service of their grand design. They're using their media lapdogs to pump out reassuring lies about safe passages and routine space debris while they quietly activate emergency protocols and move critical personnel to secure locations. I've seen the flight records, folks. Private jets carrying government officials and corporate executives to locations that don't officially exist. Facilities that were built with your tax dollars, but designed to save only those who consider themselves your betters. They've turned science into propaganda, transformed our educational institutions into indoctrination centers, and corrupted our information systems so thoroughly that most people can't tell the difference between truth and manipulation anymore. But the universe doesn't care about their lies. Cosmic forces don't respect their corporate hierarchies. And when that reckoning comes, when the real truth becomes undeniable, their money won't save them, their bunkers won't protect them, and their carefully constructed illusions will crumble like everything else. They've forgotten that we're all human beings sharing the same fragile planet, that we all bleed the same blood, breathe the same air, and face the same cosmic forces that have been shaping this world since long before their empires existed and will continue long after their names are forgotten. The time for comfortable lies is over. The time for convenient explanations has passed, and what's coming will strip away all the artificial barriers they've constructed between human and human, between truth and power, between the real world and their manufactured reality. They can silence witnesses, they can manipulate media coverage, they can flood the airwaves with expert reassurances, but they cannot stop what's already in motion. They cannot negotiate with the laws of physics, and they cannot hide from the cosmic truth that's hurtling toward all of us at 17 miles per second. This is about reclaiming human dignity in the face of those who would reduce us to statistics, about demanding truth from those who profit from our ignorance, and about recognizing that when the final accounting comes, we're all just temporary arrangements of stardust trying to make sense of our brief moment in an infinite universe. So I'm telling you now, while there's still time to prepare, while there's still time to demand answers, while there's still time to look up at the sky and see what's really coming for all of us, regardless of wealth, regardless of power, regardless of the lies we've been told about our safety and our future, the machine they've built to control us is about to meet forces that don't care about their authority, and when that collision happens, the only thing that will matter is whether we face it as free human beings or as the deceived slaves they've tried to make us.
Good evening, I'm Oscar Stamper, and we begin tonight with breaking news that will fundamentally change everything we thought we knew about the approaching asteroid. Just 2 hours ago, the Deep Space Observatory issued an emergency correction to their trajectory calculations for Object 2024 Alpha, and the news is catastrophic. The asteroid, previously calculated to pass safely by Earth at a distance of 60,000 miles, is now confirmed to be on a direct collision course with our planet. Advanced radar tracking and gravitational modeling have revealed what scientists are calling a systematic miscalculation in the asteroid's orbital path, with impact now projected to occur in approximately 16 days. The announcement has triggered immediate emergency protocols across multiple government agencies and prompted urgent international consultations among world leaders. We go now to Grace Frost, who is outside the grocery stores and gas stations where panic buying has already begun in the hours since this announcement.
Oscar, the scene here can only be described as controlled chaos. Behind me, you can see lines of cars stretching for blocks as people attempt to fill their gas tanks, while inside the supermarket, shelves are being stripped bare of water, canned goods, and emergency supplies. Store manager Patricia Williams tells me they've sold more inventory in the past 3 hours than they typically move in an entire week, with customers buying cartloads of non-perishable food, batteries, flashlights, and camping equipment. The mood here is tense but not yet panicked, with many people expressing disbelief that scientists could have been so wrong about something so fundamental as whether an asteroid was going to hit the Earth. I've spoken with dozens of shoppers, and the most common reaction is confusion about what they should actually be preparing for, because no one seems to know what happens when a 10-mile-wide asteroid strikes our planet. Traffic is backing up on all major highways leading out of the city, with some families loading moving trucks and heading for what they hope will be safer rural locations. Police are reporting a significant increase in calls related to domestic disturbances and public intoxication, suggesting that the stress of this news is already taking a psychological toll on the community. Back to you, Oscar.
Thanks, Grace. The president is expected to address the nation within the next several hours, while Congress has been called into emergency session to consider federal disaster response measures. The Federal Aviation Administration has grounded all non-essential flights and is coordinating with international aviation authorities to manage what officials describe as an unprecedented global transportation crisis as millions of people attempt to relocate. Stock markets around the world have suspended trading after massive sell-offs in the opening minutes following the announcement. We now turn to our astronomer, Dr. Grissom, who was present at the observatory when these new calculations were completed.
Oscar, I have to tell you, I've never experienced anything like what happened in that observatory today. For the past 48 hours, our team has been running and rerunning trajectory calculations because we were getting readings that didn't match our initial projections. At first, we assumed there were errors in our instruments or our computational models, because what we were seeing seemed impossible based on our earlier data. But as more observatories around the world confirmed our measurements, we had to accept the terrifying reality that our original calculations contained a fundamental error. The asteroid's approach velocity is significantly higher than we initially measured, and its trajectory is being influenced by gravitational perturbations that we failed to account for in our preliminary models. What this means is that instead of passing safely by Earth, Object 2024 Alpha is going to strike our planet with the force of approximately 100 million nuclear weapons. The impact will occur somewhere along the mid-Atlantic coast of the United States, with current projections placing the strike zone between the Carolinas and New Jersey, and the consequences will be catastrophic not just for the eastern seaboard, but for the entire planet. I wish I could offer some hope, some possibility that we're still wrong about this, but multiple independent confirmation from observatories worldwide has verified these calculations beyond any reasonable doubt.
Dr. Grissom, can you help our viewers understand how such a massive miscalculation could have occurred? How does the entire global scientific community miss something this fundamental about an object that threatens human civilization?
That's the question that's going to haunt the scientific community for however much time we have left. The honest answer is that our initial observations were limited by the asteroid's position relative to solar glare, which made precise measurements extremely difficult. We were working with incomplete data and making assumptions about the asteroid's composition and mass distribution that turned out to be catastrophically wrong. Additionally, the gravitational influences we failed to account for are subtle and complex, requiring computational models that we simply didn't run during our initial assessment because we thought we had adequate data. In retrospect, we should have been more cautious about announcing safe passage trajectories based on preliminary calculations, but the standard protocols in asteroid detection assume that close approaches are rare enough that initial measurements are usually sufficient. This asteroid represents a perfect storm of factors that combine to create the most significant scientific miscalculation in human history. The meteor impacts we've been experiencing over the past week now make complete sense as advanced debris from an object that's actually heading directly toward us, rather than passing safely by.
Dr. Grissom, for our viewers along the eastern seaboard who might be in the potential impact zone, what would you recommend they do in these circumstances?
Oscar, I have to be completely honest with your viewers. For those within approximately 500 miles of the projected impact zone, essentially from Atlanta, Georgia to Boston, Massachusetts, the immediate blast effects will be unsurvivable. However, for residents further inland or along the outer edges of the projected zone, I would recommend immediately beginning evacuation procedures toward the interior of the continent. Move as far west as possible, seek underground shelter if available, and prepare for extended periods without power, communications, or normal infrastructure. Stock up on non-perishable food, water purification tablets, and medical supplies for at least 6 months. The global climate disruption following impact will make survival challenging, even thousands of miles from the impact site. Most importantly, stay with family and loved ones, because in the face of something this unprecedented, human connection may be our most valuable resource.
We'll continue our coverage of this developing crisis throughout the night. Emergency management officials are urging residents within 500 miles of the projected impact zone, from Richmond, Virginia to Boston, Massachusetts, to begin immediate evacuation procedures toward the interior of the continent, while federal authorities work around the clock to coordinate what is now being called the largest emergency response in human history. The president is expected to address the nation within the hour with emergency evacuation orders and federal disaster declarations. And FEMA has activated every available resource for what officials are describing as humanity's greatest survival challenge. International allies have moved with unprecedented speed to offer evacuation assistance, with Canada opening its borders to American refugees and establishing massive emergency shelters, while Mexico has created emergency refugee camps along its northern border and is preparing to receive millions of displaced Americans. Religious leaders across all faiths are calling for prayer vigils and community support networks, while mental health professionals are working around the clock to provide crisis counseling for what psychologists are now calling the most traumatic event in recorded human history. To our viewers in the impact zone, we understand that no words can possibly address what you're facing tonight, but please know that the entire world is uniting to help in every way possible, and that your courage and strength in these impossible circumstances represents the very best of human resilience. When we return in just 60 seconds, we'll have live updates from major evacuation routes, locations of emergency shelters and supply distribution centers, and breaking news on international coordination efforts to save as many lives as possible. This is Oscar Stamper with Channel 7 News, and I want you to know that our entire news team will remain here with you, broadcasting continuously until the very end. Because in times like these, staying connected is more important than anything else. Stay strong, stay together, and we'll be right back with life-saving information you need to know.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
My fellow Americans, I speak to you tonight at a moment that will test our nation's resolve, our unity, and our determination to face whatever challenges the future may hold. Like all of you, I have been briefed on the latest scientific findings regarding the asteroid known as Object 2024 Alpha, and I want you to know that your government is taking swift and decisive action to address this unprecedented situation. Now, let me be clear about something from the outset. This is not a time for panic. This is not a time for despair. This is a time for Americans to do what we have always done best, which is to come together in the face of adversity and marshal all of our resources, all of our ingenuity, and all of our determination to protect our way of life. I have spent the last several hours in consultation with the brightest scientific minds in our nation and around the world, and I want to assure you that we are not facing this challenge alone, because leaders from every major nation have committed their full support to a coordinated international response that will bring together the finest technological capabilities our species has ever developed. The facts are these, and I believe in giving the American people the straight truth, even when that truth is difficult to hear. We have approximately 16 days before this asteroid reaches Earth, and our scientists tell me that the impact will have significant global consequences that will require unprecedented preparation and response. But I also want you to know that we are not powerless in the face of this threat, because at this very moment, teams of engineers and scientists are working around the clock to develop and deploy technologies that can divert or destroy this asteroid before it reaches our planet. The United States possesses the most advanced space technology in human history, and we are prepared to use every tool at our disposal, including nuclear capabilities that have been designed and tested for exactly this type of scenario. I have authorized the immediate mobilization of our most sophisticated spacecraft and our most powerful weapon systems, and I have directed NASA, the Department of Defense, and our international partners to proceed with all possible speed toward a solution that will protect not just America, but all of humanity from this cosmic threat. Now, I know that many of you are frightened, and I understand that fear because this is unlike any challenge our nation has ever faced. But I want you to remember that America has always been at its best when the stakes are highest. We put men on the moon when the experts said it couldn't be done. We built the technologies that connect our world and defend our freedoms, and we have never, ever backed down from a fight when the security of our people was at stake. This asteroid represents the ultimate test of human ingenuity and international cooperation, and I am confident that the same spirit that built this great nation, the same determination that has carried us through our darkest hours, will see us through this crisis as well. In the coming days, you will hear from your local and state officials about emergency preparations and safety measures, and I urge you to follow their guidance while maintaining the calm and dignity that has always defined the American character. We will get through this together, we will protect our families and our communities, and we will demonstrate once again that there is no challenge too great for the American people when we stand united in common purpose. God bless you, God bless your families, and God bless the United States of America. I will now be taking a few questions.
Mr. President, given that scientists were completely wrong about this asteroid trajectory until just hours ago, how can you possibly assure the American people that the same experts now have viable solutions to stop a 10-mile wide asteroid in just 16 days?
Well, that's a fair question, and I understand the skepticism because obviously we've had some challenges with the initial calculations. But let me tell you what I've learned in my briefings with our top scientists and military leaders. The miscalculations that occurred were based on limited observational data during the asteroid's initial discovery. But now that we have complete tracking information and full computational models, our teams have a clear understanding of exactly what we're dealing with. More importantly, the technologies we're deploying against this asteroid were developed over decades specifically for planetary defense scenarios, and they've been tested extensively in controlled conditions that simulate exactly these kinds of challenges. NASA has been preparing for asteroid impacts since the 1990s. Our nuclear arsenal includes weapons specifically designed for space-based applications, and our international partners bring additional capabilities that complement our own systems perfectly. So while I understand the concern about scientific accuracy, the difference is that we're no longer operating with incomplete data. We're operating with full knowledge and proven technologies that give us every reason to be confident about a successful outcome.
Mr. President, 16 days is an extraordinarily short timeline for any kind of space mission, let alone one to destroy an asteroid the size of a mountain. Are you asking the American people to believe that the same government that takes months to fix highway potholes can somehow organize a planet-saving mission in 2 weeks?
You know, I appreciate the colorful comparison, but let me explain something about how emergency response works. When the stakes are this high, and when you have the full resources of the federal government and our international allies working in complete coordination, no longer this isn't about normal bureaucratic processes or typical government timelines. This is about crisis response protocols that have been developed and rehearsed for exactly these kinds of scenarios, where every minute counts and every resource is available. The spacecraft and weapon systems we're deploying already exist. They're already fueled, they're already positioned, and they've been maintained in readiness for rapid deployment, precisely because we know that asteroid threats don't give you months or years to prepare. Our military launches complex missions on much shorter timelines than this when national security is at stake. And I can tell you that every agency, every contractor, every international partner involved in this effort is operating under emergency protocols that eliminate every unnecessary delay and bureaucratic obstacle. The American people should know that when their government faces a genuine existential threat, we have capabilities and response systems that can move faster and more decisively than our normal operations would suggest.
Mr. President, if these mitigation efforts fail, what are you telling American families about their survival chances? Should people be evacuating cities, stockpiling supplies, or making peace with their loved ones?
I want to be very direct with you about this because I think the American people deserve honest communication from their president, especially during times of crisis. Our scientific and military advisors have given me their highest confidence that the mission we're launching will succeed in either destroying or diverting this asteroid, and that confidence is based on decades of research, testing, and preparation for exactly this scenario. However, I would be irresponsible if I didn't acknowledge that we are also preparing contingency plans for emergency response and population protection, because that's what good government does, even when we expect successful outcomes. FEMA is coordinating with state and local authorities to ensure that emergency supplies, medical facilities, and communication systems are positioned to respond to any secondary effects from our intervention. And we're providing guidance to families about reasonable preparedness measures that make sense regardless of the specific scenario we face. But I want to emphasize that these are precautionary measures, not predictions of failure, because I have complete faith in the capabilities of our scientists, our military, and our international partners to protect the American people and all of humanity from this threat. The message I want families to hear is this: trust in the preparations we've made. Follow the guidance of your local officials, stay close to your loved ones, and have confidence that your government and your military are fighting for you with every tool and every technology we possess. That is all the questions I have time for today.
Good evening, I'm Oscar Stamper, and tonight we report from a world transformed by the knowledge that humanity may have less than 2 weeks left. In the 3 days since scientists confirmed that Object 2024 Alpha will strike somewhere between the Carolinas and New Jersey in approximately 13 days, what began as orderly emergency preparations has devolved into widespread panic as the reality of our situation settles into the collective consciousness of our species. Major highways leading away from the eastern seaboard are clogged with traffic that hasn't moved in hours, as millions attempt to flee the projected impact zone for inland areas that authorities warn may not be any safer when an asteroid this size strikes our planet. Reports are flooding in from across the mid-Atlantic region of empty store shelves, abandoned businesses, and government services breaking down under the strain of mass population movements that dwarf any emergency evacuation in human history. International stock markets have essentially ceased to function, currency systems are failing, and what economists are calling the complete collapse of normal economic activity has occurred in less than 72 hours. We go now to Grace Frost, who is reporting from Interstate 95, where thousands of vehicles have been stranded without fuel as gas stations across the evacuation zone have run dry.
Oscar, the scene here on Interstate 95 can only be described as a humanitarian crisis in the making. Behind me, you can see an endless line of vehicles stretching to the horizon, most of them loaded with everything families could pack into their cars and trucks before fleeing the cities from Richmond to Boston. These people have been stranded here for over 18 hours now after running out of gasoline when they discovered that every service station for hundreds of miles has either run out of fuel or shut down entirely. I've been walking along this highway talking to families, and the stories are heartbreaking. Elderly people unable to continue on foot, parents carrying small children in temperatures that reach 90 degrees today, and people sharing bottles of water with complete strangers because no one knows when help might arrive. Sarah Martinez, a mother of 3 from Virginia Beach, tells me she spent her family's entire savings buying a used truck and supplies 3 days ago, only to realize that half the eastern seaboard had the same idea and there simply isn't enough gasoline or food to support this kind of mass exodus from the impact zone. Emergency services are completely overwhelmed, with ambulances unable to reach medical emergencies because the roads are impassable, and state police reporting that they've abandoned normal traffic enforcement because there's simply nowhere for people to go. Back to you, Oscar.
Thanks, Grace. In cities across the projected impact zone, reports continue to pour in of social order breaking down as normal institutions prove inadequate to handle the psychological and logistical demands of preparing for potential regional annihilation. Looting has been reported in major retail centers from Atlanta to Philadelphia, though police departments say they're focusing their limited resources on protecting hospitals, schools, and emergency shelters rather than commercial property. Churches, mosques, synagogues, and temples throughout the mid-Atlantic states are reporting overflow crowds as people seek spiritual guidance in what many religious leaders are calling humanity's darkest hour. The National Guard has been deployed in 8 states along the eastern seaboard to assist with crowd control and emergency services, though military officials acknowledge that no peacetime institution was designed to handle the complete breakdown of normal social functioning across such a vast area. We now go to Alan Stanley, Federal Emergency Coordinator, for an assessment of the government's promised response to this crisis.
Oscar, I want to assure your viewers that, despite the understandable public anxiety, the federal response to this crisis is proceeding exactly according to the emergency protocols that have been developed for scenarios of this magnitude. The President and his national security team are in continuous communication with our international partners, and the technological solutions being deployed represent the most advanced planetary defense capabilities that human civilization has ever developed. Now, I understand that people are frightened by the scenes of mass evacuation from the impact zone and the supply shortages we're seeing, but these are temporary disruptions that we anticipated and planned for in our emergency response models. The important thing for citizens to understand is that the mission to intercept and destroy this asteroid is proceeding on schedule, with launch preparations at multiple facilities being completed around the clock by teams of engineers and technicians who represent the absolute best of human scientific achievement. The logistical challenges we're seeing with population movements away from the Carolinas and the mid-Atlantic coast are certainly significant, but they pale in comparison to the technological challenge of asteroid interception, which is a problem we've been preparing to solve for decades. I can tell you that the confidence level among our scientific advisors remains extremely high, and the contingency plans we've activated are designed to maintain essential services and social stability during the brief period before our mission eliminates this threat entirely.
Mr. Stanley, with respect, the scenes we're witnessing don't look like temporary disruptions. They look like the collapse of civilization across the entire eastern seaboard. How can the government maintain that everything is under control when millions of people are stranded on highways fleeing the impact zone, entire cities are being abandoned, and basic services are failing across multiple states?
Oscar, I appreciate your concern. and I want to be honest about the unprecedented nature of this challenge, but I think it's important to maintain perspective about what we're actually seeing. Yes, we're witnessing the largest voluntary population movement in American history as people evacuate the projected impact area between Georgia and Massachusetts. And yes, that movement has created logistical challenges that are straining our infrastructure and our emergency response systems. But what we're not seeing is the kind of complete social breakdown or widespread violence that some predicted might occur when people learned about the Mid-Atlantic impact projection, which tells me that the American people are responding to this crisis with the resilience and common sense that has always defined our national character. Long supply shortages and transportation problems are exactly the kinds of short-term disruptions that emergency management plans are designed to handle, and I can tell you that federal resources are being deployed to address bottlenecks in fuel distribution, medical supplies, and emergency services in the affected evacuation areas. More importantly, these disruptions will become completely irrelevant once our mission succeeds in eliminating the asteroid threat, which our technical teams assure me will happen within the next several days. The message I want to convey to families who are struggling with these temporary hardships is that their government hasn't forgotten about them, that we're working around the clock to provide assistance, and that the resolution of this crisis is much closer than the current chaos might suggest.
We'll continue our round-the-clock coverage of this unprecedented crisis as it unfolds. For viewers in the projected impact zone who are unable to travel or who have decided to remain in their homes, emergency officials recommend staying indoors, conserving food and water supplies, and avoiding areas where large crowds have gathered for evacuation. Mental health professionals are reporting a surge in crisis calls to suicide prevention hotlines from the Carolinas to New England, while hospitals across the eastern seaboard say they're treating record numbers of patients for anxiety, panic attacks, and stress-related medical conditions. When we return, we'll have reports from international correspondents on how other nations are responding to this global crisis and an update on the government's promised technological solutions to prevent the mid-Atlantic asteroid impact. This is Channel 7 News, continuing our coverage of what may be humanity's final weeks on Earth.
My beloved congregation, we gather here tonight not as mere mortals cowering before cosmic forces beyond our understanding, but as children of the Almighty God who holds the very foundations of heaven and earth in His righteous hands. The book of Revelation tells us that in the last days the stars shall fall from heaven like figs shaken from a tree by mighty winds. And behold, we now witness with our own eyes the fulfillment of prophecy that was written 2,000 years ago by the hand of John the Divine. This is not random chance. This is not cosmic accident. This is the deliberate judgment of a holy God who has looked down upon the wickedness of mankind and found us wanting in the balance of divine justice. For too long, we have turned our backs on the Creator who formed us from the dust of the earth. We have worshiped the golden calves of materialism and technology. We have declared ourselves the masters of creation while forgetting that we are but clay in the potter's hands. The Lord God spoke through the prophet Isaiah, saying, I will punish the world for its evil and the wicked for their iniquity. And now that punishment descends from the heavens with the force of divine wrath that no earthly power can withstand. Look around you at the chaos in our streets, at the panic that has seized the hearts of men, at the collapse of all the institutions and systems that humanity thought would protect them from the consequences of their rebellion against the Most High. This asteroid, this harbinger of destruction, is nothing less than the sword of the Lord lifted high above a world that has forgotten its Creator, and no amount of human technology, no nuclear weapons, no clever schemes of scientists can turn aside the judgment that proceeds from the throne of God Almighty. But hear me clearly, beloved, for this is not merely a message of wrath. This is a call to repentance for all who have ears to hear and hearts to understand the mercy that still flows from the cross of Jesus Christ our Lord. even now, even as the cosmic clockwork of divine judgment ticks toward its appointed hour, the grace of God extends itself to every soul who will turn from their sin and cry out for salvation from the one who died to save us from exactly this kind of eternal destruction. The prophet Joel declared, "Rend your hearts and not your garments, and return unto the Lord your God, for he is gracious and merciful, slow to anger and of great kindness." And I tell you that the same God who commands the asteroid to fall can command it to pass by if his people will humble themselves and seek his face with genuine repentance. This is not about politics. This is not about science. This is about the eternal destiny of immortal souls who stand on the brink of meeting their Creator. And the question that matters is not whether we can deflect an asteroid, but whether we can deflect the wrath of God through the blood of the Lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. The governments of earth promise salvation through rockets and nuclear warheads, but I proclaim to you the salvation that comes through the name of Jesus Christ, who conquered death itself and rose again to offer eternal life to all who believe. In the days of Noah, the Lord warned of coming judgment through the preaching of righteousness for 120 years, and the people laughed and continued in their wickedness until the flood came and swept them all away. Today we have perhaps days, not decades, to make our peace with God, to fall on our knees before the throne of grace and plead the blood of Christ over our sins and the sins of our nation. Oh, my friends, can you not see that this is the hour for which the church has been preparing since the day of Pentecost? The moment when all of human history converges on the choice between light and darkness, between salvation and destruction, between the kingdom of God and the kingdom of this fallen world? The psalmist wrote, "The Lord reigns, let the earth rejoice." And I tell you that even in the shadow of cosmic judgment, we can rejoice because our redemption draws near, because the King of Kings is about to establish his eternal kingdom where righteousness dwells forever. This asteroid may destroy cities, it may shake the foundations of the earth, it may bring an end to civilization as we know it, but it cannot touch the soul that has been washed in the blood of the Lamb. It cannot separate us from the love of Christ that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come can ever destroy. So I call upon you tonight not to fear the fire that falls from heaven, but to fear the one who has power to cast both body and soul into hell, and having feared him, to run to him for the mercy and grace that he offers freely to all who call upon his name. Let the scientists build their rockets, let the politicians make their speeches, let the world rage against the inevitable, but let the people of God lift up their heads because their redemption draws near, because the Lord God omnipotent reigns, and because no weapon formed against the children of light shall ultimately prosper. Come forward now. Come while there is still time. Come while the mercy of God still extends itself to guilty sinners. Come and be saved from the wrath that is to come. Come and find peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. Come and discover that even in the valley of the shadow of death, the Good Shepherd walks beside his sheep and leads them safely home to glory everlasting.
Good evening, I'm Oscar Stamper with what may be the most important newscast in human history. Tonight, after days of social chaos and growing desperation, world leaders have announced a coordinated global response that they say represents humanity's best and only hope of survival. In an unprecedented display of international cooperation, the space agencies and military forces of 17 nations have combined their resources to launch what officials are calling the most ambitious space mission ever attempted, a nuclear interception operation designed to destroy Object 2024 Alpha before it can reach Earth. The mission, designated Operation Deliverance, will utilize a fleet of modified intercontinental ballistic missiles carrying high-yield nuclear warheads launched simultaneously from sites across 3 continents to converge on the asteroid at a distance of approximately 2 million miles from Earth. President Beck, speaking from the Situation Room just 1 hour ago, declared this mission humanity's finest hour and expressed complete confidence that the combined technological might of our species will prove sufficient to eliminate this cosmic threat. We go now to Grace Frost, who is at the Vandenberg Space Force Base in California, one of the primary launch facilities for this historic mission.
Thanks, Oscar. I'm standing here on the perimeter of Vandenberg, where behind me you can see 3 massive Titan IV rockets being prepared for what officials tell me will be the most critical launch sequence in human history. The atmosphere here is electric with tension and determination as teams of engineers and technicians work around the clock to complete final preparations for launches that must be timed to the precise second if this mission has any hope of success. General Patricia Hawkins, who is overseeing the launch sequence here, tells me that each of these rockets carries multiple nuclear warheads with a combined yield equivalent to 50 million tons of conventional explosives, making this the most destructive payload ever assembled for a single mission. What's remarkable is the international coordination required to make this possible, with Russian scientists providing trajectory calculations, European engineers contributing guidance systems, and Asian manufacturers supplying critical components that were delivered here just yesterday by military transport aircraft. The families of the launch personnel I've spoken with describe this as a surreal mixture of pride and terror, knowing that their loved ones are participating in a mission that will either save the world or represent humanity's final defiant gesture against extinction. Security here is unlike anything I've ever witnessed, with multiple perimeters established by both military and federal agencies, because officials say they cannot allow any possibility of sabotage or interference with what may be our species' last chance for survival. The launch window opens in approximately 8 hours, and everyone here tells me they've never felt pressure like this, knowing that the fate of every person on Earth depends on the precision of their work. Back to you, Oscar.
Thanks, Grace. Similar scenes are playing out at launch facilities in Kazakhstan, French Guiana, and the Baikonur Cosmodrome, where teams are making final preparations for what scientists describe as the most complex synchronized space operation ever attempted. The technical challenges are staggering, requiring the coordinated launch and navigation of multiple nuclear-armed spacecraft across millions of miles of space to converge on a target traveling at 17 miles per second. Emergency shelters have been established in major cities worldwide as a precautionary measure, though officials continue to express confidence that the mission will succeed and such preparations will prove unnecessary. We now go to our astronomer, Dr. Grissom, to help us understand the science behind this unprecedented operation.
Oscar, what we're witnessing today represents the culmination of decades of research, planning, and international cooperation in planetary defense. And I want to emphasize to your viewers that this is not some desperate last-minute improvisation, but rather the deployment of technologies and strategies that have been developed specifically for scenarios exactly like this one. The nuclear warheads being deployed are not ordinary weapons. They're specialized devices designed to maximize their destructive effect in the vacuum of space, where conventional explosions behave very differently than they do in our atmosphere.
Our computer models, which have been verified by independent scientific institutions around the world, show that the combined force of these synchronized detonations will either completely shatter the asteroid into fragments too small to cause significant damage, or deflect its trajectory enough to ensure it misses Earth entirely. The precision required for this mission is extraordinary, I'll grant you that, but the guidance systems and navigation technologies we're using represent the most advanced engineering achievements in human history, and they've been tested extensively in conditions that simulate exactly the scenario we're now facing. What gives me complete confidence in this operation is that we're not depending on a single system or a single approach. We're deploying multiple redundant technologies from multiple nations, which means that even if individual components experience problems, the overall mission has multiple pathways to success.
Mr. Grissom, the timing seems incredibly tight given that this asteroid was only confirmed to be on a collision course just over a week ago. How can you be certain that technologies developed for theoretical scenarios will work against the reality of a 10-mile-wide asteroid traveling at cosmic velocities?
That's an excellent question, Oscar, and it gets to the heart of why I have such confidence in this mission despite the compressed timeline. The fact is that planetary defense research has been ongoing for more than 30 years, ever since the scientific community recognized that asteroid impacts represent one of the few truly existential threats to human civilization. The technologies we're deploying aren't theoretical. They're based on proven systems that have been tested in space, including nuclear devices that were successfully detonated in controlled conditions during the atmospheric test ban era, and guidance systems that have successfully delivered payloads to targets millions of miles away during previous space exploration missions. The compressed timeline actually works in our favor in some ways because it means the asteroid is still far enough from Earth that relatively small changes in its velocity or trajectory will result in significant changes to its final path, giving us multiple opportunities to achieve a successful outcome, even if our first attempt doesn't completely destroy the object. Most importantly, the international scientific community has achieved a level of cooperation and resource sharing that would have been impossible under normal circumstances, which means we're bringing capabilities to this mission that far exceed what any single nation could have deployed on its own. I want to assure the American people and the world that this mission represents our best scientific minds and our most advanced technologies working together for a common purpose, and the confidence level among our technical teams is extraordinarily high.
As we await the launch of Operation Deliverance, we want to remind viewers that this represents humanity's collective effort to control our own destiny in the face of cosmic forces that dwarf anything our species has previously encountered. Religious leaders around the world are holding prayer vigils for the success of this mission, while scientists and engineers work feverishly to complete preparations for what may be the most important 8 hours in human history. Emergency broadcast systems will carry live coverage of the launch sequence and mission progress, and will remain on the air continuously until we know whether humanity's technological prowess is sufficient to turn aside this threat from the void. This is Channel 7 News, standing with you as our species faces its greatest test.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
My fellow Americans and my fellow citizens of Earth, I speak to you tonight on the eve of what I believe will be remembered as humanity's greatest triumph over the forces that have threatened our survival since the beginning of time. In just a few hours, the combined technological might of 17 nations will launch the most ambitious rescue mission in human history, a coordinated strike against the asteroid that threatens not just America, not just our allies, but every man, woman, and child who calls this beautiful planet home. Now let me tell you something about the moment we find ourselves in, because this is not just about rockets and nuclear weapons and complex orbital mechanics. This is about who we are as a species and what we're capable of when we put aside our differences and work together for the common good of all humanity. For too long, the nations of Earth have been divided by politics, by economics, by ancient grudges and territorial disputes that seem so petty now in the face of a threat that recognizes no borders and respects no flags. But this crisis has revealed something magnificent about the human spirit, something that gives me more hope for our future than any military victory or economic achievement ever could. And that is our capacity to unite in common purpose when the stakes are high enough and the cause is just enough to call forth the very best in all of us. Tonight, Russian engineers are working alongside American technicians to calibrate guidance systems that will carry our hopes across millions of miles of empty space. Tonight, Chinese scientists are collaborating with European researchers to solve computational problems that would have been impossible for any single nation to address alone. Tonight, the space programs that were once symbols of national rivalry have become instruments of international cooperation that represent the finest expression of human ingenuity and determination. When I think about the generations of Americans who came before us, who faced their own moments of testing and rose to meet challenges that seemed insurmountable, I know that we are worthy inheritors of that tradition of courage and innovation that has always defined our national character. We are the nation that put men on the moon when the experts said it couldn't be done. We are the people who built the technologies that defend freedom around the world. And we are the civilization that has never, ever backed down from a fight when the security and survival of innocent people was at stake. This asteroid represents the ultimate test of everything we've learned about ourselves and our capabilities over the centuries of human progress. And I am confident that when future historians write about this moment, they will record that the people of Earth, led by American courage and determination, prove that there is no challenge too great for the human spirit when it is properly applied to a worthy cause. The mission that launches in just a few hours carries with it not just nuclear warheads and sophisticated guidance systems, but also the prayers and hopes and dreams of every person who has ever looked up at the stars and wondered about our place in the vast cosmos that surrounds us. Operation Deliverance is more than a military mission. It is a declaration of independence from the forces of nature that have controlled human destiny since the dawn of civilization. A statement that we refuse to be passive victims of cosmic accidents, and a demonstration that the same intelligence and creativity that built our cities and composed our symphonies and discovered the secrets of the universe can also protect us from the dangers that universe contains. I want every American family to know that the brave men and women who are carrying out this mission represent the absolute best of our military, our scientific community, and our engineering capabilities, and they go forward with the complete support and unlimited resources of the most powerful nation in human history. But more than that, they go forward as representatives of all humanity, carrying the hopes of every parent who wants their children to have a future, every teacher who dreams of students yet to be born, every artist who envisions masterpieces yet to be created, and every believer who sees in this moment not the end of human civilization, but the beginning of a new chapter in our species' long journey toward the stars. When the sun rises tomorrow morning, it will shine down on a world that has been delivered from destruction by the courage, intelligence, and determination of free people working together for the common good. And that sunrise will mark not just our survival, but our graduation from a species that merely inhabits this planet to a civilization that has proven itself capable of protecting this planet and all who dwell upon it. May God bless the brave souls who carry out this mission. May God bless America, and may God bless all the nations of earth as we stand together in this moment of supreme testing and ultimate triumph. I will now be taking a few questions.
Mr. President, can you walk us through the technical specifics of how Operation Deliverance will actually destroy or deflect an asteroid that's 10 miles wide and traveling at 17 miles per second?
Well, that's a great question, and I want to give you the kind of detailed answer that the American people deserve, because I think it's important for everyone to understand exactly how this mission is going to work. Our nuclear warheads are specifically designed for space-based operations, which means they've been engineered to maximize their destructive effect in the vacuum environment where there's no atmosphere to contain or amplify the explosion. The strategy is what our scientists call a coordinated kinetic disruption, where multiple nuclear devices detonate simultaneously at precisely calculated distances from the asteroid's surface to create a series of shock waves that will either fragment the object into pieces too small to cause significant damage or alter its velocity enough to change its trajectory so that it misses Earth entirely. The timing has to be absolutely perfect, and that's where the international cooperation becomes so critical, because we need the combined computational power and tracking capabilities of 17 different space agencies to ensure that all of our warheads reach the target at exactly the same moment and detonate with the precise coordination that the physics of this operation requires. Our computer models show that the combined yield of these weapons, properly positioned and timed, will deliver more than enough energy to achieve either fragmentation or deflection, and we have multiple backup scenarios built into the mission profile in case any individual component doesn't perform exactly as planned.
Mr. President, this level of international cooperation is unprecedented in human history. How were you able to convince nations that have been enemies for decades to share their most sensitive military technologies for this mission?
You know, that's one of the most remarkable aspects of this entire crisis, and it really speaks to something fundamental about human nature that I think gives us reason for hope beyond just the technical success of this particular mission. When I first reached out to world leaders about coordinating our response to this threat, I expected to encounter the usual diplomatic obstacles, the usual concerns about national security and technological secrets and competitive advantages that normally make this kind of cooperation so difficult. But what I discovered instead was that when people are faced with genuine existential danger, when the survival of their families and their nations and their way of life is actually at stake, all of those traditional barriers just melt away in the face of common necessity and shared humanity. The Russian president told me, and I'm paraphrasing here, that asteroids don't respect national boundaries any more than they respect political ideologies, and that the same rocket technology that could threaten one nation can also save all nations when it's properly applied. The Chinese premier made a similar point about how scientific knowledge belongs to all humanity when humanity itself is under threat, and the European leaders emphasized that this kind of cooperation represents the natural evolution of international relations in an age where global challenges require global solutions. What we've accomplished in just a few weeks of planning and coordination gives me tremendous optimism about what we could achieve in other areas if we approach problems like climate change, poverty, and disease with the same sense of urgency and shared responsibility that we've brought to this mission.
Mr. President, if Operation Deliverance fails, what contingency plans does the government have in place, and what would you say to the American people about facing the end of civilization?
Let me be very clear about something from the outset, because I think it's important for the American people to understand where I stand on this question. Operation Deliverance is not going to fail, it's going to succeed. And it's going to succeed because we've brought together the finest minds, the most advanced technologies, and the most extensive resources that human civilization has ever assembled for a single purpose. However, I would be irresponsible as your president if I didn't acknowledge that we have prepared comprehensive contingency plans for every conceivable scenario, because that's what good leadership requires, even when you have complete confidence in the primary course of action. Those contingency plans include emergency shelter systems, communication networks that can function under extreme conditions, and resource distribution protocols that would maintain essential services and social stability during any temporary disruption that might result from secondary effects of our mission. But I want to emphasize that these are precautionary measures designed to address the aftermath of our success, not preparations for failure, because failure is simply not an option when the stakes are this high and when we have this level of capability and determination. The message I want every American family to hear is this: trust in the preparations we've made, have confidence in the technologies we've deployed, and know that your government and your military are fighting for you with every resource and every capability we possess. Tomorrow morning, when the sun rises on a world that has been delivered from destruction, we'll begin the process of rebuilding not just from this crisis, but toward a future where humanity has proven itself capable of protecting this planet and everyone who calls it home. That is all the questions I have time for today.
All right, we're live on the Max Campbell podcast. So I'm sitting here with Alan Stanley, and this dude is basically in charge of saving the planet. Like, this is not hyperbole. There's a massive asteroid heading straight for Earth, and this guy is coordinating nuking it out of existence. Alan, I gotta ask you, man, when you wake up in the morning, do you just go, holy shit, I'm literally trying to save humanity today? Because that's got to be the most intense job pressure of all time.
Max, it's definitely not your typical government job, I'll give you that. But honestly, the adrenaline and the responsibility kind of crystallize your thinking in ways that regular bureaucratic work never could. When the stakes are this high, all the usual political nonsense just falls away, and you're left with pure problem solving. We've got 17 countries working together on this thing, sharing nuclear weapons technology, and nobody's arguing about jurisdiction or trade deals or any of that crap.
17 countries working together. Dude, we can barely get Congress to agree on a lunch menu. How did you guys pull that off? And we're talking about nuclear weapons here. Like the most guarded secrets on the planet. Russia's just handing over launch codes to American technicians.
It's wild, Max. Absolutely wild. I've been in government for 25 years, and I've never seen anything like it. Russian engineers are literally sitting in the same room as Pentagon officials, working on targeting solutions. Chinese scientists are sharing real-time trajectory data with NATO command centers. It's like the asteroid scared everybody straight, you know? When you're facing extinction, suddenly all those geopolitical games seem pretty stupid.
That's insane. So you're telling me that it took a giant space rock to finally get world peace? That's the most Max Campbell shit I've ever heard. Like, of course it would take an asteroid to make humans stop being territorial assholes. But here's what I'm wondering. These nukes, they were designed to blow up cities and kill millions of people. Now we're shooting them into space to save everyone. That's some serious cosmic irony right there.
You're hitting on something that keeps me up at night, Max. These weapons that were built during the Cold War to end civilization, now they're literally civilization's last hope. It's like the ultimate redemption story for nuclear technology. We spent 70 years terrified these things would destroy us, and now they might be the only thing that saves us. The same physics that can level a city can also nudge a massive chunk of rock just enough to miss Earth entirely.
No, but seriously, that's some beautiful cosmic balance shit right there. The universe is weird, man. So walk me through this. How do you actually coordinate nuclear strikes in space? Like, are you guys just hoping your math is right, or do you have some kind of backup plan if this goes sideways?
The math is solid, Max. We've run simulations thousands of times, and the orbital mechanics are as predictable as anything in physics. But yeah, we've built redundancy into every aspect of this mission. multiple launch vehicles, multiple warheads, multiple detonation points. If half our rockets fail, we can still succeed. If our primary targeting solution doesn't work, we have secondary and tertiary options. The thing people don't realize is that we're not trying to blow this asteroid into tiny pieces. We just need to change its velocity by a few meters per second. That's enough to make it miss Earth by thousands of miles.
A few meters per second? That's it? Dude, that's like the difference between hitting a bullseye and missing the dartboard entirely, but on a cosmic scale. That's terrifying and amazing at the same time. So if you guys pull this off, what happens next? Do all these countries just go back to hating each other, or have we accidentally created some kind of new world order?
That's the million-dollar question, Max. What we've accomplished in 2 weeks of crisis planning, this level of international cooperation, diplomats have been trying to achieve this for generations. We've proven that humans can work together when the stakes are high enough. The question is whether we'll remember that lesson after the crisis passes, or whether we'll go back to fighting over oil and trade routes and all the usual bullshit. My hope is that Operation Deliverance becomes the template for how we handle global challenges going forward.
Operation Deliverance? That's a badass name. You know what's crazy, though? This whole thing is basically humanity's first real boss fight. Like, for our entire history, our biggest enemies have been each other. Now we're facing something that doesn't give a shit about our politics or our religions or our borders. It's just a big rock that wants to ruin our day, and our response is to shoot nuclear weapons at it. That's the most human thing ever.
You're not wrong, Max. This is definitely our species' coming-of-age moment. We're using the same fundamental forces that power stars to protect our planet from cosmic threats. It's like we've graduated from fighting each other to fighting the universe itself. And honestly, win or lose, I think this mission represents humanity at its absolute best. Our finest minds, our most advanced technology, our greatest capacity for cooperation, all focused on a single goal, survival.
Man, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Tomorrow, we're either going to pull off the most badass thing humans have ever done, or we're going to find out that the universe doesn't give a shit about our clever monkey plans. Alan Stanley, thank you for coming on the show, and thank you for literally trying to save the world. This has been wild, and I hope to God you guys nail this thing. Ladies and gentlemen, Alan Stanley, the man who's about to find out if human beings are smart enough to punch an asteroid in the face and win.
This is Oscar Stamper with Channel 7 News, and we interrupt all regular programming to bring you breaking news of catastrophic proportions. At approximately 2:47 this morning Pacific time, a massive fragment of Object 2024 Alpha struck the Pacific Ocean roughly 200 miles west of the California coastline, generating a tsunami that is now devastating coastal communities from Mexico to Alaska. The fragment, estimated by emergency seismologists to be roughly the size of a city block, impacted the ocean with the force of thousands of nuclear weapons, creating waves that reached heights of over 150 feet as they struck the western seaboard just minutes ago. Emergency management officials confirm that coastal evacuation orders came too late for millions of residents, and early reports suggest casualties in the hundreds of thousands as entire cities along the Pacific coast have been swept away by walls of water unlike anything in recorded human history. The implications of this impact are staggering, not just for the immediate human tragedy unfolding along our coastline, but for what it reveals about the true destructive potential of the main asteroid that is still approaching Earth. We go now to Grace Frost, who is reporting from our emergency helicopter over what was once the city of Santa Monica.
Oscar, I'm looking down at what can only be described as the complete obliteration of a major American city. Where Santa Monica stood just hours ago, there is now nothing but churning brown water filled with debris that stretches inland for miles beyond where the coastline used to be. The Santa Monica Pier, the beachfront hotels, the residential neighborhoods that housed over 90,000 people. All of it has been swept away as if it never existed, replaced by a muddy inland sea that our pilot tells me extends at least 15 miles from the original shoreline. We can see scattered survivors clinging to rooftops of buildings that are still partially above the waterline. But emergency response teams tell me that rescue operations are nearly impossible because the infrastructure that would normally support such efforts, roads, hospitals, communication centers, has been completely destroyed. The human cost of this disaster is still being calculated, but early estimates suggest that the death toll from this single fragment impact may exceed any natural disaster in American history. What makes this even more terrifying is the realization that this fragment represented perhaps 1% of the mass of the main asteroid, which means that if Object 2024 Alpha itself reaches Earth, we're looking at destruction on a scale that defies human comprehension. From our vantage point here, I can see similar devastation extending up and down the coast as far as the horizon allows, with entire metropolitan areas simply erased from existence by a force of nature that no human preparation could have withstood. Back to you, Oscar.
Thanks, Grace. Similar reports are coming in from coastal areas throughout California, Oregon, and Washington state, with the cities of San Francisco, Portland, and Seattle reporting catastrophic damage from tsunami waves that in some areas reached more than 200 feet in height. International reports confirm that the tsunami has also struck the coasts of Japan, the Philippines, and other Pacific Rim nations, creating a disaster of truly global proportions that emergency response agencies were simply not equipped to handle. The fragment's impact has been detected by seismic monitoring stations around the world, registering as the equivalent of a magnitude 9.2 earthquake and generating shock waves that have been felt as far inland as Denver and Salt Lake City. We now go live to Jenny Biederman, an astrophysicist who has been monitoring the situation from the Emergency Command Center.
Oscar, I have to tell you that what we witnessed early this morning has fundamentally changed our understanding of the threat we're facing from Object 2024 Alpha. When our tracking systems first detected this fragment separating from the main asteroid 3 days ago, our models predicted that it would either burn up completely in the atmosphere or create a relatively minor impact event if it reached the surface. What we failed to account for was the fragment's density and composition, which appear to be far more destructive than anything we've encountered in previous asteroid encounters. The energy released by this morning's impact exceeded our worst-case projections by a factor of at least 10, which means that our previous calculations about the main asteroid's destructive potential may have been catastrophically underestimated. If a fragment representing perhaps 1% of the main asteroid's mass could generate this level of devastation, then the impact of Object 2024 Alpha itself would likely result in what scientists call an extinction-level event, potentially ending human civilization and most life on Earth. I wish I could offer some reassurance about our ongoing mission to intercept and destroy the main asteroid, but the truth is that this fragment impact has revealed that we may be dealing with forces that exceed our technological capabilities to address. The nuclear warheads currently en route to intercept Object 2024 Alpha were designed based on our original assessments of the asteroid's composition and density, assessments that this morning's events have proven to be dramatically insufficient.
Dr. Biederman, are you saying that Operation Deliverance may not be sufficient to stop the main asteroid, given what we've learned from this fragment impact?
Oscar, that's the question that every scientist and government official involved in this mission is grappling with right now. And I have to give you an honest answer, even though it's not the answer anyone wants to hear. The fragment that struck the Pacific this morning has demonstrated that Object 2024 Alpha is composed of materials that are far denser and more structurally intact than our models predicted, which means that the explosive force required to fragment or deflect the main asteroid may be significantly greater than what we've deployed in Operation Deliverance. Our current nuclear payload was calculated based on assumptions about asteroid composition that this morning's impact has proven to be incorrect, possibly by orders of magnitude. The mission is still proceeding as planned because our spacecraft are already en route and cannot be recalled or modified at this point, but I would be misleading the public if I claimed that our confidence levels remain unchanged after witnessing the kind of destruction that a relatively small fragment was capable of producing. What this means for humanity is that we may need to begin preparing for scenarios that go far beyond the temporary disruptions and regional damage that we originally anticipated and start considering the possibility that we're facing the kind of global catastrophe that could fundamentally alter the future of human civilization on this planet.
As rescue operations continue along the devastated Pacific coastline, the full scope of this disaster continues to unfold with each passing hour. The fragment impact has disabled much of the early warning and communication infrastructure that would normally coordinate disaster response efforts, leaving millions of survivors cut off from emergency services and outside assistance. International aid organizations are mobilizing resources to assist with what may be the largest humanitarian crisis in modern history, though officials acknowledge that the scale of destruction exceeds the capacity of existing emergency response systems. President Beck is expected to address the nation within the next few hours as the government reassesses both its disaster response efforts and its confidence in the mission to stop the main asteroid. We'll continue our coverage of this developing catastrophe throughout the night as humanity confronts the terrifying possibility that this morning's devastation may be merely a preview of far greater destruction to come. This is Channel 7 News, standing with you during what may be the darkest chapter in human history.
I told you they were lying to us. I told you they knew what was coming. And now millions of people are dead because the shadow government that runs this planet decided that your lives, your families, your children were expendable in their sick game of cosmic roulette. They want you to believe this Pacific fragment was some kind of surprise, some unexpected piece that broke off from the main asteroid. But I've got sources inside the tracking stations. I've got contacts in the deep space monitoring facilities, and they're telling me that this fragment has been visible on their screens for over a week. A week! They watched it coming, they calculated its trajectory. They knew exactly where it was going to hit and when. And they made the conscious decision to let it happen because they needed a test run. They needed to see what kind of damage their cosmic weapon could inflict before they deploy the real thing. You think it's coincidence that most of the corporate elite and government officials evacuated their coastal properties 3 days before the impact? You think it's luck that defense contractors moved their critical personnel to inland facilities just hours before the tsunami hit? Wake up, people! This isn't about saving humanity. This is about culling humanity, reducing the population to manageable levels, while the puppet masters who orchestrated this entire crisis retreat to their underground bunkers and offshore platforms to wait out the chaos they've deliberately created. They're using this asteroid as cover for the largest genocide in human history, and they're counting on your fear and desperation to make you beg them for salvation that they never intended to provide. The nuclear mission they're launching isn't designed to destroy the asteroid. It's designed to fragment it into smaller pieces that they can control and direct towards specific targets they want to eliminate. Think about it logically. If they really wanted to save everyone, why didn't they start evacuation procedures the moment they discovered this thing was on a collision course? Why didn't they use the media they control to warn people about the fragment impact instead of pretending it was going to burn up harmlessly in the atmosphere? Because the death and destruction we witnessed this morning serves their agenda perfectly, creates the exact kind of chaos and desperation that allows them to implement martial law, suspend constitutional rights, and establish the authoritarian control system they've been planning for decades. They needed those coastal cities destroyed. They needed those populations eliminated because those were the areas with the highest concentrations of free-thinking individuals who might have resisted their plans for global domination. Now they can point to the devastation and say, see what happens when cosmic forces are unleashed. See how helpless you are without our protection. But the real cosmic force at work here isn't some random asteroid from outer space. It's the cold calculation of inhuman beings who have decided that most of us don't deserve to survive their vision of the future. They're not trying to save humanity. They're trying to save themselves while using natural disasters as cover for artificial selection on a planetary scale. This is the end game, folks. This is the moment when all their masks come off and we see the true face of the machine that has been controlling human destiny for generations while pretending to serve the common good. They've turned science into sorcery, transformed our governments into execution chambers, and perverted our technology into instruments of mass murder, all while maintaining the fiction that they're working to protect us from threats they themselves have orchestrated and directed. The asteroid isn't the enemy. The real enemy sits in boardrooms and bunkers, calculating acceptable casualty rates and drawing up post-apocalyptic power structures that will ensure their continued dominance over whatever remains of human civilization after they finish their work. But here's what they didn't count on. Human consciousness, human dignity, human refusal to go quietly into the night they've prepared for us. Even as their artificial disasters unfold, even as their controlled media feeds us lies about heroic rescue missions and technological solutions, there are still voices crying out in the wilderness, still people willing to speak truth to power, still souls who understand that we're not facing cosmic judgment, but human betrayal on the ultimate scale. The universe isn't trying to kill us. The people who control our governments and our information systems are trying to kill us, and they're using the vastness of space and the terror of extinction to hide their fingerprints on the trigger of the weapon they're pointing at the heart of human freedom. So when you see those rockets launching tomorrow, when you watch their theatrical display of international cooperation and technological prowess, remember that you're witnessing the greatest deception in human history, a false flag operation written across the stars themselves to convince you that your executioners are actually your saviors, that the same system that created this crisis is somehow capable of resolving it in your favor.
Good evening, I'm Oscar Stamper with Channel 7 News, broadcasting live from our emergency studios as humanity prepares to witness the most critical moment in our species' history. In less than 2 hours, the final launch sequence of Operation Deliverance will begin, sending the last wave of nuclear-armed interceptors toward Object 2024 Alpha, in what government officials are calling our final chance to prevent global extinction. The mission proceeds despite the catastrophic revelations from the Pacific Fragment impact 2 days ago, which demonstrated that this asteroid possesses destructive capabilities far beyond anything our scientists originally calculated. 17 launch facilities across 3 continents are coordinating the most complex synchronized space operation ever attempted, while millions of people around the world have gathered in public spaces, homes, and emergency shelters to witness what may be humanity's last defiant act against the cosmos. The mood is somber, but determined as our species collectively holds its breath, knowing that the next several hours will determine whether human civilization survives the next week. We go now to Grace Frost, who is at Times Square, where an estimated 200,000 people have gathered to watch the launch coverage on the massive screens normally reserved for New Year's celebrations.
Thanks, Oscar. I'm standing in the heart of Times Square, surrounded by what may be the most diverse and unified crowd I've ever witnessed, as people from every walk of life have come together to share this moment of ultimate uncertainty. The massive electronic billboards that usually advertise consumer products now display countdown clocks and live feeds from launch facilities around the world, while the crowd maintains an almost cathedral-like silence that's completely unlike anything Times Square has ever experienced. I've been moving through this gathering talking to people, and what strikes me most is the mixture of hope and resignation in their voices, as if everyone understands that they're witnessing either humanity's greatest triumph or its final chapter. Maria Santos, a teacher from Brooklyn who brought her 2 young children, tells me she couldn't bear to watch this alone at home and needed to be surrounded by other human beings when we find out whether our species has a future. Religious leaders from multiple faiths have set up prayer circles throughout the square, while scientists and engineers who worked on the mission components are being treated like celebrities, with crowds gathering around them to hear technical explanations of what we're about to attempt. What's remarkable is the complete absence of the usual urban tensions and conflicts, as if the prospect of extinction has reminded everyone that we're all members of the same fragile species clinging to the same small planet. The crowd erupts in spontaneous applause every time the launch countdown appears on the screens, and I can tell you that the emotional energy here is unlike anything I've ever experienced as a reporter. Back to you, Oscar.
Thanks, Grace. Similar scenes are being reported from major cities worldwide as humanity collectively witnesses what scientists are describing as the most technically challenging mission in the history of space exploration. The complexity of coordinating 17 simultaneous launches to converge on a target millions of miles away, traveling at cosmic speeds, represents an engineering achievement that many experts considered impossible just weeks ago. International cooperation has reached unprecedented levels, with former adversaries sharing their most classified military technologies and space agencies providing real-time data coordination that has eliminated traditional barriers between nations. We now go to Alan Stanley, Federal Emergency Coordinator, to help us understand the technical challenges facing this historic mission.
Oscar, what we're witnessing today represents the absolute pinnacle of human technological achievement, with engineering systems and international coordination that exceed anything our species has ever attempted in peacetime or war. The synchronized launch sequence requires precision timing measured in milliseconds, because each interceptor must follow a trajectory calculated to account for the gravitational influences of multiple celestial bodies, the asteroid's changing position and velocity, and the complex orbital mechanics that govern movement in deep space. What gives me tremendous confidence in this mission is that we're not depending on theoretical calculations or untested technologies, but rather on proven systems that have been refined and enhanced by the combined expertise of every major spacefaring nation on Earth. The nuclear warheads being deployed represent the most advanced weapons technology ever developed, specifically modified for the unique conditions of space-based detonation, where conventional explosive principles behave very differently than they do within Earth's atmosphere. Our computer modeling shows multiple pathways to mission success, from complete fragmentation of the asteroid to trajectory deflection that would send the object safely past Earth, which means that even if individual components of the mission experience problems, we have redundant systems and multiple opportunities to achieve a successful outcome. Most importantly, the international scientific community has achieved a level of cooperation and resource sharing that demonstrates the very best of human nature when our species faces an existential challenge that transcends all the political and cultural divisions that normally separate us.
Mr. Stanley, given what we learned from the Pacific Fragment impact about the asteroid's density and composition, how confident can you be that this mission will succeed where our original calculations proved so catastrophically wrong?
That's the question everyone is asking, Oscar. And I want to give you a completely honest answer because the American people deserve nothing less at a moment like this. The Pacific fragment impact did reveal that our original assessments underestimated the asteroid's structural integrity and density, which means that the destructive force required to achieve mission success may be greater than what we initially calculated. However, the nuclear payload we're deploying was designed with significant safety margins, specifically because we understood that our knowledge of this asteroid's composition was necessarily limited, given the compressed timeline of our response. The warheads being launched today carry explosive yields that exceed our minimum requirements by factors of 10 or more, which means that even if the asteroid proves to be significantly denser than our models predicted, we still have more than adequate destructive capability to achieve fragmentation or deflection. Additionally, the mission strategy doesn't depend on a single massive explosion, but rather on multiple coordinated detonations that will stress the asteroid's structure from different angles simultaneously, which our engineers believe will be effective regardless of the specific composition we're dealing with. The most important factor is that this represents our best scientific knowledge and our most advanced technology applied to humanity's survival. And while I cannot guarantee success, I can tell you that every person involved in this mission believes we have a realistic chance of preventing the extinction of our species. That's worth fighting for, regardless of the odds we face.
As the final countdown begins for Operation Deliverance, we want to remind our viewers that this moment represents the culmination of human ingenuity, international cooperation, and the fundamental determination of our species to control our own destiny rather than accept passive extinction. Whatever happens in the next few hours, historians will record that when faced with obliteration from the void, humanity responded not with resignation, but with the full application of our scientific knowledge and technological capabilities. Launch sequences are now beginning at facilities in Kazakhstan and French Guiana, with Vandenberg and the remaining sites scheduled to follow in precisely timed intervals over the next 47 minutes. Emergency broadcast systems worldwide will carry continuous coverage of the mission progress and will remain on the air throughout the night as our interceptors begin their journey toward Object 2024 Alpha and humanity's rendezvous with destiny. This is Channel 7 News, witnessing with you as our species attempts to write its own future among the stars rather than accept extinction from them.
Brothers and sisters, the sea has already risen in judgment upon this wicked generation, and the Lord God Almighty has shown us but a taste of the wrath that is to come. 2 days ago, we witnessed the Pacific Ocean itself become an instrument of divine retribution, sweeping away the cities of the proud and the mighty as if they were sand castles built by children, drowning the multitudes who thought their technology and their science could stand against the judgment of the Most High. The waters rose up like the walls of the Red Sea, but this time they crashed down not upon the enemies of God's people, but upon a nation that has forgotten its Creator, that has worshipped the false idols of materialism and scientific pride, that has turned away from righteousness to embrace the darkness of moral relativism and spiritual bankruptcy. Did you think that God would not notice when you removed prayer from your schools, when you turned your backs on the hungry and homeless in your streets, when you hoarded wealth while the widow and orphan cried out for justice? Did you believe that the Almighty would remain silent while you built mansions for yourselves, but left the poor to suffer in squalor while you celebrated greed and called it success, while you oppressed the stranger and the refugee, showing no mercy to those who sought shelter at your gates? The Lord has sent a messenger from the heavens, a stone of judgment hurtling toward this earth with the fury of divine wrath, and already its herald has struck the waters and shown you what awaits those who persist in rebellion against their Creator. Behold how the mighty have fallen, how the skyscrapers of human arrogance have crumbled beneath the waves of God's displeasure. The financial centers where men worshiped money instead of the Lord, the entertainment districts where they celebrated every form of debauchery and sin, the universities where they taught lies about creation and mocked the truth of Scripture, all swept away in an instant by the righteous judgment of Him who sits upon the throne of eternity. This is not some random cosmic accident. This is not the blind forces of nature operating without purpose or meaning. This is the deliberate and calculated response of a holy God to a civilization that has systematically rejected His authority and spurned His love. The scientists with their white coats and their computer models, the politicians with their empty promises and their godless policies, the media personalities who spread corruption and filth into every home, where are they now when the sea has risen to claim them? Their wisdom has become foolishness, their power has become weakness, their pride has become humiliation before the throne of the one who holds the wind and waves in the palm of his mighty hand. You trusted in your government to save you. You put your faith in nuclear weapons and space missions. You believed that human ingenuity could overcome divine judgment, but the sea has already risen, and it has shown you the futility of standing against the purposes of God. The tsunami that devastated the Pacific coast was not the main event. It was merely the opening act in the final drama of human history, the first drops of rain before the flood of wrath that will consume every nation and every people who have not bowed the knee to Jesus Christ. But even now, even as the asteroid of judgment approaches with unstoppable force, even as your scientists scramble with their pathetic rockets and their desperate schemes, the mercy of God still calls out to every soul who has ears to hear. The same Lord who commanded the waters to rise in judgment is the same God who can calm the storm with a word, who can turn aside the stone from heaven if his people will humble themselves and pray. This is not the time for false hope in human solutions. This is not the moment to trust in the arm of flesh. This is the hour when every man, woman, and child must fall upon their faces before Almighty God and cry out for forgiveness, for mercy, for salvation from the wrath that is to come. The blood of Jesus Christ can wash away every sin, can cleanse every stain of wickedness, can turn the heart of stone into a heart of flesh that beats with love for the Lord who made us. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand, and the King is coming with judgment and with fire to separate the wheat from the chaff, the righteous from the wicked, those who have called upon his name from those who have hardened their hearts against his love. The sea has risen in judgment, but the grace of God rises higher still for all who will receive it, for all who will confess their sins and accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior before the final trumpet sounds and the books are opened and every secret thing is revealed. Come to the altar, come to the cross, come to the mercy seat while there is still time, while the door of grace remains open, while the Spirit of God still strives with the hearts of men and calls them to salvation. For soon, very soon, the main asteroid will strike, and then there will be no more time for repentance, no more opportunity for mercy, no more chance to escape the judgment that this generation has brought upon itself through its wickedness and rebellion against the living God.
All right, we're live. I'm here with Reverend John Matthews, and man, we're living through some crazy times right now. This asteroid situation, the Pacific impact that killed millions of people, it's like something out of a movie, but it's real, and you've got some pretty intense thoughts about what's happening here. You think this is like divine intervention, God's judgment? Walk me through that, because that's a heavy way to look at this whole thing.
Max, I appreciate you having me on. Look, I know this sounds extreme to a lot of people, but when you really examine what's happening, this isn't random cosmic bad luck. We're looking at precise, measured consequences for a civilization that's completely turned its back on God. I mean, we're talking about a generation that celebrates every form of moral corruption. When you reject God's authority for this long, eventually there are consequences.
Okay, but here's what I struggle with, and I'm genuinely curious about your perspective here. When that tsunami hit, it wasn't just taking out people you might consider wicked, right? There were kids, elderly people in nursing homes, people who were just living their lives trying to be good people. How do you reconcile that with a loving God? That seems pretty indiscriminate to me.
That's the question everyone asks, and I get it. But here's the thing. You're looking at it from a purely human perspective. When we talk about innocent children or good people dying, we have to understand that physical death isn't the ultimate tragedy for someone who belongs to God. Those kids, they're in the presence of their Creator right now. The real tragedy is for people who die in their sins, who pass into eternity separated from God because they refused the gift He offered through Jesus Christ.
Interesting. So you're saying death isn't the worst thing that can happen to someone?
Exactly. Look, God's mercy isn't measured by whether He prevents physical death. It's measured by whether He provides a way to spiritual salvation, which He did through the cross. Every person who died had opportunities to turn to God. The same God who sent his son to die for our sins is the same God who has to execute justice eventually. Love without justice is just sentimentality.
Now here's something that's fascinating to me. We've got all these scientists and engineers working around the clock to blow this thing up with nuclear weapons. If this is God's judgment, are they fighting against God's will? Should we just accept whatever happens, or could their efforts actually be part of some bigger plan?
That's probably the most important question you could ask right now, Max. I believe God can use anyone, even people who don't believe in him, to accomplish his purposes. If God chooses to turn this asteroid away through that nuclear mission, it won't be because human technology beat divine judgment. It'll be because God in his mercy decided to give us one last chance to wake up spiritually.
But what if it works? What if they blow it up and we're all saved?
Here's what worries me. If the mission succeeds, most people will credit human achievement instead of divine grace. They'll go back to their old ways with even more pride, thinking they proved they can stand against God and win. The real tragedy might not be physical destruction, but spiritual hardening. Whether this asteroid hits or misses, the fundamental question for every person is still the same: are you right with God?
You know, regardless of what people believe about God or religion, you're dealing with some pretty universal human questions here. Mortality, meaning, purpose. For someone listening to this who's maybe never thought about these things before, but now they're facing the possibility that we might all die, what would you tell them?
Max, I'd tell them this might be their last opportunity to get right with their Creator. The same Jesus who wept over people because they wouldn't come to him is calling out to everyone right now. Don't let pride or thinking you're too smart for this keep you from crying out to God for mercy. He promises that whoever calls on his name will be saved. Whether you have days left or decades, the most important decision you'll ever make is what you do with Jesus Christ.
Whether this asteroid hits or not, whether people believe what you're saying or not, you're definitely making people think about the big questions. And in times like these, maybe that's exactly what we need to be doing.
That's all I can ask for, Max. Get people thinking about eternity before it's too late.
Reverend John Matthews, everybody. Wild times, wild conversations. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you, Max. God bless.
We take you live to exclusive audio from the International Space Station, where Commander Thomas Mitchell and his crew are serving as humanity's eyes in space during Operation Deliverance. These are the actual communications between the ISS and Mission Control Houston, as our astronauts witness firsthand whether humanity's last hope will succeed or fail. What you're about to hear represents the only real-time eyewitness account of the nuclear intercept mission from anyone with a direct view of the engagement zone. Commander Mitchell and his international crew have volunteered to remain at their posts aboard the space station, knowing that their unique vantage point makes them invaluable observers of this historic moment, regardless of its outcome.
Houston ISS, we have visual confirmation of bicorner launch. T plus 47 seconds nominal trajectory. Russian interceptor showing good burns. Telemetry looks clean from our perspective. Switching to telephoto now for Vandenberg sequence. Houston, we see ignition, beautiful launch, multiple vehicles tracking true. Copy your goal for observation protocol Alpha. Moving to starboard observation port. Object 2024 Alpha is clearly visible without optical aid now. Approximately 15 degrees off our orbital plane. Houston, this is remarkable coordination you've achieved down there. We're watching history unfold from up here. Coral launches look nominal. We can see the boost phase trails against the terminator line. All interceptor packages appear to be following projected flight paths. ETA to target still showing 18 hours, 23 minutes on our displays.
Houston ISS, we're at intercept minus 6 minutes, moving to primary observation position as briefed. We have clear line of sight to engagement zone, all optical systems active, recording initiated. Copy Houston, we confirm all interceptors show nominal status on final approach. Object 2024 Alpha bearing 270, range approximately 2.1 million miles. Target appears. Houston, the target appears much brighter than our mission briefings indicated, significantly more reflective than expected. Russian package ETA 90 seconds, American interceptors 3 minutes behind, European and Chinese packages tracking as briefed. Houston, request confirm, or are we recording this for historical archive? Copy that, Houston. We understand the significance. 30 seconds to Russian intercept. We have clear visual through primary scope. All 3 crew members observing. Houston, first detonation, confirm visual on nuclear fire, multiple warheads, synchronized burst.
My God, Houston, that's the brightest thing I've ever seen. Brighter than the sun in our telescopic view. Houston, ISS. Houston, we have a problem. The asteroid, Houston, it's still there, completely intact, no visible damage, trajectory unchanged. American interceptors impacting now 17 warheads, maximum yield. Houston, no effect. Repeat, no effect. Target continues on course. European package detonating. Negative impact. Houston, negative impact on target integrity or trajectory. Chinese interceptors. Houston, the asteroid is absorbing these detonations like they never happened. We just witnessed 2 billion tons of explosive force. Object 2024 Alpha shows no signs of fragmentation, no trajectory alteration, no surface damage visible through our optical systems. Houston, I need to confirm what we're seeing here because it doesn't match any of our mission parameters. The asteroid appears to have completely absorbed nuclear detonations that should have shattered a mountain. Houston, are you copying our observations? Houston, please respond. We need guidance on what to report to the International Observation Network. We're showing impact in 31 hours, 15 minutes, and nothing we just witnessed suggests any change to that timeline.
ISS. Houston, we copy your observations and they match telemetry from all ground stations. Mission failure confirmed. All interceptor packages expended with no measurable effect on target. Continue observation protocols and prepare for extended mission duration. ISS, we're going to need you to maintain communications as long as possible. You may be our primary data collection platform for impact analysis. Understand your position may make you the last operational NASA asset. Continue recording everything. We'll maintain ground control as long as our facilities remain operational.
Houston, ISS, copy all. We'll continue observations and maintain communication protocol. Houston, for the record, we're honored to serve in this capacity, whatever happens down there. The view of Earth from up here, it's beautiful, Houston, still beautiful. We'll keep watching, keep recording, keep talking to you as long as the radios work. This is Commander Mitchell on ISS, continuing observation of Object 2024 Alpha and maintaining station. Houston, we're still here and we're still with you.
Those were the actual communications from the International Space Station as Commander Thomas Mitchell and his crew reported the apparent failure of Operation Deliverance. Based on what we've just heard, the most powerful weapons ever deployed against the asteroid had no visible effect. Commander Mitchell, Russian cosmonaut Alexei Petrov, and Chinese mission specialist Dr. Lai Zhang remain aboard the ISS and will continue tracking Object 2024 Alpha as it approaches Earth. Their vantage point above the atmosphere allows them to provide some of the most direct observations of the asteroid as it draws nearer. In roughly 30 hours, the crew may be among the last to record what happens as the object makes contact with our planet. We'll return to regular programming now and bring you updates as they become available from space and from government officials on what comes next. God help us all. This is Oscar Stamper with Channel 7 News, and I must report to you the most devastating news in human history. Operation Deliverance, humanity's last hope for survival, has failed catastrophically. On 14:23 Greenwich Mean Time, the nuclear interceptors launched from 17 nations reached their target coordinates and detonated with a combined force of 2 billion tons of conventional explosives, creating a series of thermonuclear fireballs visible from Earth through powerful telescopes. However, telemetry data received just minutes ago confirms that Object 2024 Alpha absorbed the full force of these detonations and emerged essentially undamaged, its trajectory toward Earth unchanged, and its structural integrity intact. The asteroid that we hope to fragment into harmless debris or deflect into a safe orbit has proven to be composed of materials so dense and resilient that the most powerful weapons ever assembled by human civilization had virtually no effect whatsoever. Mission control centers across the globe report the same devastating conclusion. The asteroid will impact Earth in approximately 36 hours, and there is absolutely nothing more that human technology can do to prevent it. We go now to Grace Frost, who is at the Johnson Space Center, where scientists and engineers are struggling to comprehend how their calculations could have been so fundamentally wrong.
Thanks, Oscar. And I have to tell you that the scene here at Mission Control can only be described as complete despair. Behind me, you can see dozens of the world's most brilliant scientists and engineers staring at computer screens that show the brutal mathematics of our failure, their faces reflecting a mixture of disbelief, horror, and resignation that I've never witnessed in my career as a journalist. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the lead mission coordinator, just confirmed to me that the nuclear detonations did make contact with Object 2024 Alpha exactly as planned, but instead of shattering the asteroid or altering its course, the explosions appear to have been absorbed by its surface like water soaking into concrete. The technical teams are describing the asteroid's composition as unlike anything previously encountered in our solar system, possibly consisting of materials that are neutron star dense or held together by gravitational forces that exceed our understanding of normal asteroid physics. What makes this failure even more heartbreaking is that every aspect of the mission worked perfectly. The launches were flawlessly synchronized. The guidance systems performed exactly as designed. The warheads detonated with precisely the intended explosive yield. The problem wasn't human error or technological failure. It was our fundamental misunderstanding of what we were trying to destroy. I've spoken with engineers who worked around the clock for weeks preparing this mission, and many of them are openly weeping as they realize that their life's work, humanity's greatest technological achievement, was insufficient to save our species from extinction. Back to you, Oscar.
Thanks, Grace. The president is expected to address the nation within the hour, though White House sources suggest there may be no meaningful federal response available to a threat of this magnitude. Emergency management agencies worldwide are reporting the complete breakdown of civil authority as the reality of inevitable extinction spreads through the global population. Communications networks are failing under overwhelming traffic as billions of people attempt to contact loved ones, while transportation systems have ground to a halt as emergency services abandon their posts to spend their final hours with their families. We now go to our astronomer, Dr. Grissom, to help us understand the scientific implications of this mission failure.
Oscar, I stand before you today as a scientist who has dedicated his entire career to understanding the cosmos, and I must admit that everything we thought we knew about asteroid composition and orbital mechanics has been proven catastrophically wrong. The nuclear weapons we deployed against Object 2024 Alpha should have been sufficient to destroy an asteroid 10 times its size, based on every computer model and every theoretical framework that the global scientific community has developed over decades of planetary defense research. The fact that these weapons had essentially no effect suggests that we're dealing with an object that may not be a normal asteroid at all, but rather something far more exotic, possibly a fragment of collapsed stellar material or a body held together by gravitational forces that we don't yet understand. What this means for Earth is that the impact scheduled to occur in 36 hours will release energy equivalent to approximately 100 billion nuclear weapons, creating a global catastrophe that will likely end not just human civilization, but most life on our planet. The impact will vaporize everything within a 1,000-mile radius, generate global earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, and throw so much debris into the atmosphere that sunlight will be blocked for years, creating what scientists call a nuclear winter that will freeze any life that survives the initial devastation. I wish I could offer some hope, some possibility that we've miscalculated again, but the brutal truth is that our species has approximately 36 hours left to exist, and there is nothing in the arsenal of human knowledge or technology that can change that outcome.
Dr. Grissom, for those who may be listening, is there any scientific basis for hope that some portion of humanity might survive this impact, perhaps in underground shelters or in remote locations far from the impact site?
Oscar, I've been asked that question dozens of times in the past hour, and I wish I could give people false comfort, but I have an obligation to tell the truth even when it's the most terrible truth imaginable. The energy that will be released by this impact exceeds anything our planet has experienced since the formation of the solar system, making the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs look like a firecracker by comparison. No underground bunker, no matter how deep or well constructed, will survive the global earthquakes that will literally shake our planet apart, while the atmospheric effects will make the surface uninhabitable for any form of complex life for decades or centuries. Even if small groups of humans somehow survived in the deepest caves of the most remote locations, they would emerge to find a world without sunlight, without plant life, without any of the biological systems that support human existence. The honest answer is that 36 hours from now, the story of humanity, the story of Earth as a living planet, will effectively come to an end. Every book that's ever been written, every work of art ever created, every act of love and courage and sacrifice that has defined our species will be erased as completely as if we had never existed at all. I'm sorry, Oscar. I know that's not what people want to hear, but it's what the science tells us, and I won't insult their intelligence or their dignity by pretending otherwise.
As we absorb the reality of our situation, reports continue to flood in from around the world of mass gatherings in churches, temples, and public spaces as people seek comfort and community in what may be humanity's final hours. Stock markets and financial institutions have ceased all operations, while government services from postal delivery to tax collection have simply stopped functioning as civil servants abandon their duties to be with their loved ones. In many ways, the social structures that have defined human civilization for millennia are dissolving as rapidly as our hope for survival, leaving only the most fundamental human bonds of family and friendship to provide meaning in the face of extinction. We'll continue broadcasting as long as our equipment functions and our staff remains at their posts, providing whatever news and information may be relevant in the time we have remaining. But I suspect that most of you watching tonight will want to turn off your televisions and spend these precious final hours holding the people you love, remembering the beauty and wonder that our species has created during its brief moment in the cosmic story. This is Channel 7 News, standing with you as we face together what no generation in human history has ever had to confront, the certain knowledge of our own extinction and the end of everything we have ever known or cared about.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
My fellow Americans and my fellow citizens of the world, I speak to you tonight from the Oval Office, not as your president, but as a fellow human being who shares with you the knowledge that our time on this earth is drawing to a close. Let me be clear about where we stand. Operation Deliverance, our nation's most ambitious undertaking, our world's greatest hope, has not achieved the outcome we so desperately needed. The asteroid that threatens our planet has proven to be beyond the reach of our finest technology, our most dedicated scientists, and our most powerful weapons. In approximately 30 hours, Object 2024 Alpha will strike our Earth, and I must tell you with the heaviest heart that there is no earthly power that can prevent this from happening. Now, I know that's not what you wanted to hear from your president tonight. I know that in times of crisis, you look to this office for solutions, for leadership, for the kind of can-do American spirit that has seen our nation through its darkest hours. But tonight I cannot offer you false hope or empty promises because you deserve the truth from your government. And the truth is that we have reached the limits of what human ingenuity and determination can accomplish. We assembled the finest minds from every nation on earth. We marshaled resources that exceeded anything attempted in the history of our species. We put aside every difference of politics and ideology to work together for our common survival. And yet it was not enough, because sometimes the challenges we face are simply larger than our capacity to overcome them, no matter how hard we try or how much we sacrifice. This does not mean we failed, my fellow Americans. This means we encountered something that was beyond our power to control, and there is no shame in acknowledging the limits of human capability when confronted with the forces of the cosmos itself. I want to speak now not about the mission that could not save us, but about the people who undertook it anyway. In these past weeks, I have witnessed acts of courage and sacrifice that remind me why I have always been so proud to be an American and so honored to serve as your president. I have seen scientists work around the clock without sleep or rest, knowing that the fate of every person they love depended on their calculations. I have seen engineers and technicians risk their lives to prepare rockets and weapon systems, not for glory or recognition, but because their fellow human beings needed them to try. I have seen diplomats from nations that have been enemies for generations put aside decades of mistrust to coordinate the most complex international operation in history. I have seen ordinary citizens across this great nation respond to unprecedented crisis, not with panic or despair, but with the kind of quiet determination and mutual support that has always defined the American character. We may not have saved our world, but we have shown what humanity is capable of when we stand together, when we put aside our differences, when we remember that we are all part of the same human family, sharing the same small planet, in a fast and sometimes hostile universe. That is a legacy worth preserving, even if there is no one left to remember it. And so, as we face these final hours together, I want to ask you to remember what has always made America great and what has always made humanity great. It is not our technology, though we have accomplished wonders that would have seemed like magic to our ancestors. It is not our wealth, though we have built a prosperity that has lifted millions out of poverty and desperation. It is not our military might, though we have defended freedom and justice against those who would destroy them. What makes us great is our capacity for love, for sacrifice, for standing by each other when times are tough, for believing that every human life has dignity and worth, regardless of race or creed or nationality. In these final hours, I urge you to hold tight to the people you care about, to tell them what they mean to you, to forgive old grudges and heal old wounds, to find whatever peace you can in the knowledge that you have lived and loved and been part of the great human story. Pray if prayer gives you comfort. Sing if music lifts your spirit. Remember the good times, the moments of joy and laughter that have made your life worth living. And know that your president and all of us who have served in this government consider it the highest honor of our lives to have represented you, to have fought for you, to have stood with you as Americans and as human beings in this final chapter. My fellow Americans and citizens of the world, we do not know what comes after this life, but we know what we have accomplished during it. We have loved our families. We have built great cities and created beautiful art. We have explored the mysteries of science and reached for the stars. We have struggled against injustice and tried to make the world a better place for our children. We have laughed and cried and dreamed and hoped, and we have shown that even in the face of extinction, the human spirit remains unbroken, defiant, and filled with grace. If there are other worlds out there, other civilizations among the stars, let them know that Earth was home to a species that, whatever its flaws, never stopped trying to be better, never stopped reaching for something higher, never stopped believing that love is stronger than hate and hope is stronger than despair. God bless you all, God bless America, and God bless the human race. May we find in eternity the peace that has eluded us in time. Good night and goodbye.
This is Oscar Stamper with Channel 7 News, broadcasting what will almost certainly be the final newscast in human history. I speak to you now not as a journalist reporting on events, but as one human being sharing these last moments with other human beings as we await the end of everything we have ever known. Object 2024 Alpha is now visible to the naked eye as a bright star moving across the morning sky, growing larger and brighter with each passing hour as it approaches its rendezvous with Earth in approximately 4 hours and 17 minutes. Seismic monitoring stations around the world report increasing gravitational effects from the asteroid's approach, with tidal disruptions already causing unprecedented earthquakes and tsunami warnings along every major coastline. Most of our technical crew has left to be with their families, but a few of us have chosen to remain at our posts, to bear witness to humanity's final chapter, and to provide whatever comfort we can to those who, like us, face this ending together. Grace Frost is standing by at what was once Times Square, though I'm not sure our connection will hold much longer.
Oscar, I'm here in Times Square, or what remains of it, where the massive video screens are flickering and failing as power systems across the city begin to collapse. The crowds that gathered here in recent days have mostly dispersed, with families returning to their homes to spend these final hours in private. But a few hundred people remain, strangers who have chosen to face the end together rather than alone. Behind me, you can see the asteroid itself, now clearly visible above the Manhattan skyline, as a brilliant point of light that grows noticeably brighter even as I speak to you. The atmosphere here is surreal, almost peaceful, with people sharing food and water, holding hands with strangers, singing hymns and folk songs that echo off the empty buildings. I've been speaking with Maria Santos, the teacher from Brooklyn I interviewed during the launch coverage, and she tells me that being here with other people, even people she's never met before, gives her comfort in knowing that humanity's story ends not in isolation, but in community. The children who remain are remarkably calm, perhaps because they don't fully understand what's happening, or perhaps because they trust the adults around them to...
appear to have lost our connection to grace, which is not unexpected given the electromagnetic effects that astronomers predicted would accompany the asteroid's final approach. Communication satellites have been failing throughout the morning, and most broadcast networks have already gone off the air as their technical staff abandoned their posts to be with loved ones in these final hours. I want to take this opportunity to thank the handful of crew members who have stayed here with me. Camera operator Jim Rodriguez, audio technician Sarah Roper, and director Patricia Williams, who have all chosen to do their jobs right up to the end because they believe that someone should be here to witness and record these final moments of human history. We now go live to Jenny Biederman for what may be our final scientific assessment of the situation.
Oscar, thank you for allowing me to speak to whatever audience may still be watching. I want to use these final moments to acknowledge something that I think is important for the historical record. If anyone ever finds that record, we failed to save our species, but we did not fail to learn something profound about our place in the universe. This asteroid has taught us that Earth exists in a cosmos that is both more beautiful and more dangerous than we ever imagined, where forces beyond our comprehension can erase entire civilizations in an instant. But it has also shown us what human beings are capable of when we work together, when we put aside our differences, when we commit ourselves fully to something larger than our individual concerns. The mission that could not save us nonetheless represents the finest achievement in human history, a testament to our species' refusal to accept defeat without fighting with everything we had. If there are other civilizations out there among the stars, if anyone ever discovers the ruins of our world, I hope they will understand that humanity died as it lived, reaching for the stars, refusing to surrender, believing that intelligence and courage and love might be enough to overcome even the darkest forces of nature. We were wrong about that, but we were not wrong to try.
Dr. Biederman, thank you for that perspective and for your service to humanity throughout this crisis. Looking out our studio windows now, I can see the asteroid clearly with the naked eye, a brilliant star that has grown large enough to show an actual disk. Still 4 hours away, but already dominating the sky like a second sun. Emergency alert systems are sounding continuously now, though I'm not sure who they think they're alerting or what they expect people to do at this point. The few reports we're receiving suggest that most people are exactly where they want to be, at home with their families, in churches and temples with their faith communities, in hospitals and nursing homes where caregivers have chosen to stay with patients who cannot be moved. I think about my own family, my wife Carol and our 2 daughters who are waiting for me at home, and I realize that I need to make a choice about where I want to be when this story ends. To anyone still watching, I want you to know that it has been the greatest honor of my career to bring you the news, to share with you the great events and small human stories that have shaped our world. In just a few moments, I'm going to leave this studio and drive home to hold the people I love, because that seems like the most important thing I can do with whatever time we have left. But before I go, I want to say one final thing to the universe. Earth was here, humanity was here, we loved and dreamed and built beautiful things, and we did not go gently into that final night. This is Oscar Stamper, Channel 7 News signing off. God bless you all, and goodbye.
This is Max Kimball, and I'm broadcasting from, well, this is wild, man. I'm somewhere deep underground beneath what used to be civilization. And I gotta tell you, I'm not even sure if anyone's out there listening to this anymore. Like, the electromagnetic spectrum might still be carrying human voices across this wasteland that Earth has become, but honestly, I have no idea. So it's been 47 days since Object 2024 Alpha just absolutely demolished our planet. We're talking about the force of 100 billion nuclear weapons here, people. The sky literally caught fire. I'm not being dramatic, it actually caught fire. The mountains just crumbled like they were made of sand, and the oceans, they boiled away into steam. The whole world is still shrouded in this perpetual darkness, and it's the most insane thing I've ever experienced. I'm speaking to you from this deep underground government facility that was designed for nuclear war scenarios, right? But the people who built this place never imagined, and I mean never, that it would need to shelter what might be the lone survivor of an extinction event that makes nuclear war look like a firecracker going off. It's just mind-blowing when you really think about it. Here's the crazy part, and this is what gets me. I spent my entire career exploring the big questions of human existence. Through conversation, through debate, through really digging deep into what makes us tick. And now I find myself as possibly the sole person left to preserve humanity's final thoughts. I'm talking into these microphones, broadcasting to nobody, addressing an audience that's been reduced to ghosts and memories and echoes of what we used to be. It's like the ultimate cosmic joke. I keep doing these daily broadcasts, and it's not because I think there are other survivors out there listening. I mean, maybe there are, but probably not. I do it because speaking, forming words and ideas, that's the last flickering ember of what made us human in this universe. That has shown us it doesn't care about our hopes, our dreams, our desperate need to keep existing. It's brutal, but that's reality. The seismic monitors down here are telling me that the Earth's crust is still settling from the impact. We've got massive volcanic eruptions happening continuously, just pouring ash and sulfur into an atmosphere that might never, and I mean never, let sunlight reach the surface again. It's like the planet is having the worst bad trip imaginable. And the radiation detectors, man, they're showing that this asteroid wasn't just any rock. It had elements that have poisoned our air and water with isotopes that'll stay lethal for thousands of years. So even if life somehow managed to adapt to this darkness and cold, which would be incredible by the way, it would get wiped out by the very atoms it's trying to use to rebuild. Nature is absolutely ruthless. But here I am, still talking, still forming these sentences and casting them into the void. Because language was probably our greatest achievement as a species. Think about it. It was the tool that let us transcend our individual consciousness and create something bigger than ourselves, something worth preserving, even when there's nobody left to preserve it for. That's powerful stuff right there. I've basically become the final librarian of human experience, the last guy to testify that Earth was once home to beings who asked the big questions about meaning and purpose and love. We created art and music and poetry that celebrated how beautiful existence could be, even though we always knew how fragile it was. That's what made us special. In these weeks of complete solitude, and I mean complete, like there's nobody else, I've had time to really contemplate what our species accomplished during its brief moment in cosmic history, and what lessons we might learn from our sudden and total extinction. We were young, maybe too young, to have developed the wisdom we needed to navigate the dangers of an indifferent universe. But we weren't without nobility in our striving, beauty in our creations, or grace in our capacity to love each other. Despite all our countless problems and limitations, that's something to be proud of. We built cities that reached toward the stars and composed symphonies that captured the yearning of the human heart. We painted masterpieces that revealed truths about existence that words couldn't express, and we wrote literature that explored every dimension of what it meant to be conscious beings trapped in mortal bodies yet capable of imagining eternity. I mean, when you really break it down, that's extraordinary. But here's what's maybe most remarkable. We developed science that allowed us to understand our place in the cosmos with stunning accuracy. We could measure the age of the universe, predict how distant galaxies behave, decode the fundamental laws that govern reality itself. Yet we remained completely powerless to protect ourselves from the very forces we had learned to describe with such mathematical precision. It's like having a perfect map but no vehicle. If there are other worlds out there where consciousness has emerged, and statistically there probably are, where beings look up at the night sky and wonder about their purpose and destiny, I want them to know that Earth once had a species that refused to accept ignorance as natural. We struggled against darkness, both literal and metaphorical. We chose again and again to believe that understanding was possible, even when that understanding revealed our own cosmic insignificance. That takes courage. We were here. We thought and felt and dreamed. We loved fiercely and created beautifully. And even though we couldn't save ourselves from the asteroid that erased our world, we managed to transform a small corner of the universe into something that for a brief and shining moment was alive with consciousness and hope, and this endless human desire to comprehend the mystery of existence itself. That's not nothing, people. That's something extraordinary.
The geological record tells us that mass extinction events are not anomalies in Earth's history, but rather punctuation marks in the long sentence of evolution, moments when the planet itself resets the biological equation and begins writing new chapters in the book of life. I am Dr. Neil Grissom, And though my voice may be the last human testimony preserved in whatever archives survive beneath the ruins of our civilization, I speak not as a member of a species facing extinction, but as a scientist bearing witness to a process that has shaped this planet for over 4 billion years. The impact that destroyed humanity was not the first such event, nor will it be the last, because asteroids and comets have been striking Earth since the solar system formed, and they will continue to do so until our sun exhausts its fuel and expands to consume whatever worlds remain in its vicinity.
66 million years ago, an object perhaps half the size of the one that ended our story struck the Yucatan Peninsula and terminated the age of dinosaurs, creatures that had dominated terrestrial ecosystems for over 160 million years, yet their extinction created the ecological niches that mammals would eventually fill, leading ultimately to the emergence of primates, and through them to human consciousness itself. In a sense, we owe our very existence to a previous mass extinction event, which suggests that the cosmic catastrophe that has now claimed our species may someday give rise to new forms of intelligence, new attempts at consciousness trying to understand its place in an indifferent universe that periodically erases the blackboard and starts the calculation over from the beginning. The mathematics of cosmic impacts reveals a pattern that extends far beyond our solar system, because the universe is filled with debris from stellar formation, planetary collisions, and the endless gravitational dance of celestial bodies that occasionally intersect with tragic precision. Every star system contains the remnants of its own violent birth, chunks of rock and metal and ice that orbit in complex patterns until gravitational perturbations send them careening toward whatever worlds happen to lie in their path. What happened to Earth has happened to countless other planets throughout the galaxy, and will happen to countless more in the eons to come, because this is simply how the universe operates. It builds complexity through billions of years of gradual evolution, then destroys that complexity in moments of spectacular violence, clearing the stage for new experiments in the endless drama of matter organizing itself into increasingly sophisticated forms. The civilizations that may have existed on other worlds, the alien scientists who may have faced similar asteroid threats, all discovered the same fundamental truth that we learned too late. Intelligence, no matter how advanced, remains subject to the same physical laws that govern falling rocks, and consciousness, no matter how profound, cannot negotiate with the gravitational forces that determine orbital mechanics. Yet this is not a cause for despair, but rather a recognition of our place in a cosmos that is far more creative and resilient than any single species, where the destruction of one form of complexity merely provides the raw materials for new forms to emerge, where every ending contains within it the seeds of countless new beginnings. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of mass extinction events is not that they occur, but that life itself has proven so persistent, so creative in its responses to catastrophic change, that it has repeatedly recovered from conditions that seem to preclude any possibility of biological recovery. The Permian extinction, which occurred 252 million years ago, eliminated over 90% of all marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrates. Yet within a few million years, new ecosystems had evolved to fill the empty niches, and the diversity of life eventually exceeded what had existed before the catastrophe. This suggests that while individual species, including our own, may be ephemeral and fragile, the underlying creative force that drives evolution, that transforms simple chemistry into complex biology and complex biology into consciousness itself, possesses a resilience that transcends any particular manifestation of its power. It was never a question of whether Earth would experience another major impact event, only when such an event would occur, and which species would be unfortunate enough to witness it, because this planet has been struck by asteroids throughout its history, and will continue to be struck by asteroids until the sun itself dies, each impact reshuffling the biological deck and dealing new hands in the endless poker game between order and entropy. We humans were remarkable for our brief moment in geological time, remarkable for our art and science and philosophy, remarkable for our capacity to understand our own mortality and the cosmic forces that would eventually claim us. But we were not exempt from the laws of physics that govern all matter and energy in this universe, and our extinction represents not a tragedy, but simply another chapter in the much longer story of a planet that has been experimenting with consciousness for millions of years, and will likely continue such experiments for millions more, long after the last traces of human civilization have been buried beneath layers of sediment and forgotten by whatever forms of intelligence eventually inherit the Earth. We could not save, but were privileged, for one shining moment, to call home.